Contact.
It's Chester.
It's now or never to make the progress.
God damn it, the guy T-boned me.
They are definitely going to have their elbows out. Verline goes across the grass and does take the lead away, but contact there with Evans.
Evans is told to attack.
There's no way he's going to let him pass.
It's carbon fiber being struck up. What's happening for the lead? Evans has taken over from Verline. He leads in the Jaguar. Cassidy can feel the victory slipping through his fingers. On the outside goes Nick Cassidy. Verline tries to defend. Side by side they go through the final corner. Mitch Evans is going to take the win in Shanghai.
Yes!
Mega race.
Mitch Evans takes his second victory of the season.
We were treated to a spectacular show. Round 11 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship kicked off here in Shanghai. And the adrenaline is still pumping in the paddock here today ahead of round 12. We can promise you plenty of electrifying action ahead of the live qualifying session. I'm delighted to say that joining me now, we have former racing driver and, of course, the former Maserati team principal, James Rossiter, driver and analyst, Billy Munger. Guys, yesterday's race was phenomenal. Action-packed, non-stop. It went right down to the wire, right down to the last lap. But it was Jaguar TCS Racing who enjoyed all of the celebrations with that 1-3 finish. Both of their drivers on the podium. Let's take a look back at those celebratory moments that saw Mitch Evans clinch the win. What a day it was for them. And of course, let's not forget Pascal Wehrlein in P2.
No, incredible day for Jaguar TCS Racing. We saw an amazing overtake by Mitch Evans on Pascal on that final lap going into turn 1 around the outside. What a way to clinch a victory.
And this really just puts Jaguar in such a strong position. They've now cemented themselves with a 77 points gap at the head of the team's championship.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely been the team to beat all season, and yesterday just, helped cement the fact that, the other team's going to have a hard job trying to catch up to them. They're just so consistent. They've got Nick Cassidy, who just feels like he's always on the podium. It's a great race for them yesterday, and hopefully they can build on that today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's remind ourselves as well of what happened on that action-packed final lap, because at the point of going into the final lap, it was still very much in contention. Who was going to take the checkered flag first, James?
Yeah, here we see Mitch go to the outside and then sweep in front of Pascal Wehrlein. Very risky to do it around the outside there, I have to say, in turn 1 on the start of the final lap. But that was the only opportunity he had to get it done. Pascal had driven an amazingly defensive race up until that point. Those last 5-6 laps, he managed to keep Mitch at bay. We can see them now just sweeping through turn 3. As they come out of here, Mitch can stretch his legs a bit. I was expecting Nick Cassidy here to make a move going into turn 6 on Pascal as well, and make it a Jaguar 1-2. Put his car on the outside. Pascal does a great job here of just covering him off. And he almost runs into the back of Mitch Evans. It was really well, and then he just walked Nick Cassidy out to the outside and didn't allow him any chance to get past there into 7.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the defensive driving from Pascal Wehrlein yesterday was very impressive, because there was a stage in commentary where we thought he could potentially drop back off the podium. He was a little bit low on energy, but he just managed that final lap very well, up until the last couple of corners, Nicky, where it got a little bit tight.
Yeah, we see it here now coming into turn 10. Nick dives to the outside. He tries to go around the outside, and as it tightens up into 11, Pascal just turns in and they have a bit of contact, a little bit of damage. Honestly, Nick was very lucky to keep the podium there.
Yeah, it was a touch-and-go moment, wasn't it? It almost looked like Oliver Rowland was going to come out on top, but they claimed, well, you can see the celebrations there. They managed that 1-3 finish, a phenomenal result for Jaguar TCS Racing. Now, we did get the opportunity to catch up with some of the drivers after that very frenetic race, and this is what they had to say.
I thought I got into the lead at the right time, but actually, yeah, Pascal kind of caught me napping a bit into turn 8, and he put his nose up and then had another go at me. So, yeah, I'm surprised he didn't get anything for going off track and passing me. So we have to look at that afterwards. But anyway, a great result for the team. Got it done on the last lap. I had that energy advantage, so I just wanted to bide my time and hopefully let the race come to me, and it did. So yeah, super stoked to get this 1-3 for Jag, and great points for our championship, and yeah, it was a good one.
I think in the past we've been a bit too conservative. Today maybe a bit too aggressive when we should take the lead. Yeah, just in the last lap then, because of defending, my target dropped. I had to coast quite early. That's how Mitch overtook me then into turn 1. yeah, tough fight in the last lap with the Jaguars because Mitch clearly tried to slow me down so that Nick could pass me. But yeah, a few contacts, but that's how it is.
Yeah, it's a nice race today. Awesome to get a 1-2. 1-3.
And then just in terms of your performance specifically with regards to, could you have gone earlier? Do you feel like you could have won that at some point? Because your energy management, you were higher than everybody else. We were sort of marvelling at it.
Yeah, I had the energy to win, for sure.
And just in terms of disappointment, elation, where's your head at?
It wasn't my decision, so it's okay.
I mean, I finished fourth, so it's not the end of the world, but yeah, just not the best strategy, and the balance wasn't amazing either.
Some great moves towards the end of the race there. What does this now mean for tomorrow's race? 2 laps left, more energy to play with?
Yeah, just yeah, do another good quali and go back to the drawing board on the strategy. Thanks a lot.
Well, we might have heard there from Nick Cassidy, despite the celebrations in the Jaguar team garage, he was still obviously not too happy that he didn't get the opportunity to go for the win. Let's hear now from team boss James Barkley.
Nicky, we'll do exactly that. All eyes obviously on the race today, but just averting our gaze back to yesterday, double podium for Jaguar TCS Racing. What a brilliant time that was for yourself.
Yeah, these big pressure races as we approach the second half of the season, every race counts, and that was an awesome race. It also means a lot to us to win here in China, if I'm really honest. For our parent company, JLR and Jaguar, it's a major market, so cool to do that here in China. But the team just did an awesome job yesterday. The drivers were impeccable, and to come out on top of a proper race like that is very rewarding.
A really challenging race, a really unpredictable one as well. And just listening to the analysis of Billy and James there, did you at some point, when Nick was beginning to encroach in that top 6 with the energy advantage, did you think about adopting team orders?
Well, you saw how the race panned out. Actually, there's a lot going on. And one of the things that was going on at that point in the race was Pascal had cut the chicane. And was he going to get a penalty? Was he going to give the place back? And so at that point in time, do you risk potentially creating a challenging situation where you're trying to swap cars, which is never easy to orchestrate, or do you wait and see actually if that plays out and potentially that penalty puts Pascal 5 seconds down the road or behind us, or in P2, and then Nick with an energy advantage could get Pascal. So there are a lot of things we're thinking about, and at that point in time, in that position with huge points on the table, you don't make silly errors, right? So yeah, we chose to consolidate, which in the immediacy is never easy for everyone to understand, but the reality is it's about optimizing that moment, and that's what we did with that double podium, really.
So a case of risk-reward, what would have happened had Nick ignored orders and just gone himself, because he's all about trying to win himself?
Listen, Nick's a phenomenal racing driver, so I have no doubt he would have made a very kind of, he would have made a great fight for the lead, but Nick is a member of the team at the end of the day, and as a racing driver, he's phenomenal. And days like that, where you have the ability, but it frustrates you. But it always works out in the long run, right? And the team is a team together. And we respect each other, we work together. And there's moments where you support the team, and moments where the team support you. And that's the only way a team can work. There's no other way. And most importantly, though, Nick is a professional. And although it hurts when you step out the car at the moment, in the debrief last night, as we talked through it, and even back at the hotel, we all kind of got to the point that that was the right, and the exact words that come out of it, that was the right result for us all. We know that. But importantly, as each race goes on, we just look and we optimize the situation each time. But we have to work as a team.
Well, Sir James, thank you for your time and good luck for the race today. And obviously, Nicky, before the race is qualifying, and it has to be said, would you want to bet against Jaguar TCS Racing? I know I wouldn't.
No, I don't think we'll be either. Thanks very much, Radzi. Really interesting. Some pretty fair and wise words from James Barkley there. Although, what is your perspective? Would you have made the same decisions? Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but obviously in the moment, was it the right decision?
Well, he summarised it well, the driver drives for the team, and ultimately you have to support the team sometimes, the team has to support you. I think now, with the last 5 races of the season, I'd like to see the team supporting Nick Cassidy a little bit more, because he's definitely done his fair share of the work.
True, although remember, Mitch Evans did put in a fantastic qualifying session and led a lot of the race. So, yeah. And Billy, I'm going to get your thoughts in a second. First of all, I want to just take a moment to listen to what Nick Cassidy was saying on the radio.
Man, what numbers to Mitch? Like, kilowatts difference. 3 times.
0.45.
Like I said, if we just tell me what to do about holding, racing, tell me what to do. Can someone talk to me?
So we're still holding, we help each other.
Billy, obviously we can see it here, hear him frustrated, confused. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you can hear the, the racing driver in him trying to come out there, and, he's obviously pushing the team for that information because he knows that that information that he's waiting to get in those moments is going to shape how he plans his race. And it felt like he didn't quite get the information from the team soon enough to be able to make use of that energy advantage that he clearly had. He had over a 1% advantage to his teammate Mitch Evans, which in Formula E terms is quite a lot. So for me, it was just one of those moments where he was just left hanging a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'll have a slightly different strategy ahead of today's race, which, of course, is in Shanghai. We are back in a nation where Formula E first started in China 10 years ago.
China hosted the first ever E-Prix back in 2014, and 10 years later, we're back in the country where it all began. Nico Prost took the first pole of the series with hopes of transforming that into an inaugural win.
And it's a very good start from Nico Prost by the looks of things. The app drivers are coming with him on the way down towards the first corner, but it's Prost who holds the lead into turn number 1. Absolutely nose to tail on this opening lap.
After qualifying 12th, Virgin Racing Sam Bird climbed quickly, and on lap 13 was leading while the top runners pitted.
So that means Sam Bird moves into the lead of the race as the pit stops begin.
But the overcut didn't work in the Brits' favour as he emerged 6th behind the leaders.
So he didn't really lose or gain by taking that pit stop strategy, except maybe avoiding the carnage in the pit lane.
With several laps to go, our very own Karun Chandok was hunting Bird down for 6th place, breathing down the neck of the Brit.
Oh, Sam Bird's gone wide. That could give Chandok the opportunity. Goes to the inside. Sam Bird's going to squeeze him. It really narrows down as we come up here towards this left-hander. It pressured Bird into the error.
But no one could have possibly predicted what was about to happen next. Prepare for some serious Formula E drama.
Heidfeld goes to the inside line, and they make contact, and they're both off. And that's an accident for Nick Heidfeld. He has gone off the circuit. The two of them come together in the final corner, which means Lucas de Grassi is going to take victory in the FIA Formula E race here in Beijing. A dramatic, dramatic end to the race.
For one weekend and one weekend only, Formula E took a visit to scorching Sanya for round 6 of season 5. It was a bad day at the office for some, including Bird, who fell after being at the top of the championship standings.
Bird is out. The race is over for the championship leader. He pulls off the track.
Reigning champion John-Eric Verne had something to prove, and nothing was going to stop him.
And there goes Verne! Verne leads in Sanya! Late move!
It was all over for Freins and de Grassi in the final moments of the race.
Bam! De Grassi sent spinning. Freins was hit into him by Buemi.
But Verne crossed the line, taking the win.
And Jean-Eric Verne takes the victory.
Yes! Welcome to Tichita!
Nothing more. Verne wins in Sanya.
Well, it's not just the temperature that's rising in the pit lane, it's the tension too. Qualifying is almost underway. Let's get an update from Radzi in the pit lane on what's going on.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I'm currently stood outside ERT for two main reasons. Number one, because they're one of the two teams, as you can see on the nose and the side of the front wing there, that are having their home E-Prix here in China and here in Shanghai. But reason number two, that man there, Dan Ticktum, possibly could a shock be in the offing, finished second in FP3. Cast your mind back to Mazzano, finished just off the podium there. If we were to ask Vernon Kay, the Formula E legend, who's going to win the race, he would say without a shadow of a doubt, that man there, Dan Ticktum. So could the stars be aligning for something incredible? And could something incredible happen in qualifying? It already essentially has. Cast your mind back 24 hours. Mitch Evans, Ollie Rowland in the duels were separated by 1/1000th of a second. Now, to put that into real money, if there's an average speed here of 100 kilometers per hour spread over this 3-kilometer track, that means in time trials they were separated by less than 3 centimeters. Incredible. And talking about qualifying, the way it works is very simple. We love it, the best qualifying format in all of motorsport. We split the group straight down the middle, A and B. On the left, the odd numbers in terms of championship standings. On the right, the even numbers. B are very much the even numbers, and they're the ones, I would call it the group of death, the one you'd want to look out for there. We can see the skyline of Shanghai looking absolutely stunning, but all eyes will be very much on the track here. And as we can see the names, the riders and the names picking up there. Antonio Felix da Costa, will he respond to the controversy he had last night? What about John-Eric Verneman, who loves finishing on pole as he did yesterday? Mitch Evans, what a brilliant performance. This is such a tough one to predict. Definitely looking forward to Group B, and then it'll be into duels. It'll be head-to-head, knockout, 1-on-1 format, quarterfinals, then semi-finals, then final, 3 points on the line, and an awful lot of entertainment, Nikki.
And we love entertainment. Thank you so much for that update, Radzi. Yeah, the big question is who will be on pole? But before we look ahead, I just want to quickly cast our minds back to what happened yesterday, because a couple of drivers got penalties, a couple of drivers were under investigation. Now, there was one penalty, Antonio Felix da Costa, a 5-second penalty, which seemed a little harsh. Let's take a look at the moment that he had with Jean-Eric Verne.
So you can see the final corner, there was a bit of a mess ahead of him. And then as he comes out on the exit, he just walks slowly over to the exit curb and he just pushes Jean-Eric Verne off. We can see on board with Jean-Eric, he had nowhere to go, he's on the grass. He didn't lose too much, but I feel like the penalty was quite harsh for Antonio there.
Yeah, because of course the cars finished so close together. 5 seconds meant he moved from 5th down to 16th. So lost quite a few points there. Also, of course, Pascal Wehrlein was under investigation. Billy, talk us through that moment.
Yeah, it all kicked off on the last lap in the last few corners. Actually, what Pascal was investigated for was a few laps before that in the final phase of the race. You can see Pascal trying to go around the outside of Mitch Evans. He then cuts across the grass, squeezes Mitch Evans on the apex of the last corner and keeps the position. So technically, you're looking at gaining an advantage whilst off the circuit. That's what he was investigated for. The stewards decided not to act or not to intervene, but it was a tricky one, James. Finally balanced that.
I'm not sure that's the right decision from the stewards there because, you know, he clearly was behind going into the corner and he came out in front and was leading the race. Not sure they got that one right.
Well, hopefully no penalties will happen in today's race. But first, before they race, they must qualify. So let's find out who will get those 3 points for pole position here in Shanghai. Let's go down to our commentator, Tom Brooks.
Welcome along, it's round 12 of the 2024 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship here in Shanghai. What a scorcher we had yesterday with a fantastic race culminating in Mitch Evans taking his 2nd victory of the season, followed by Pascal Wehrlein, and a double podium for Jaguar as well, with Nick Cassidy claiming 3rd place in controversial circumstances. He had the energy, he didn't have the opportunity though to be able to use it. Ultimately that double podium though, great for Jaguar in the team standings, and lots of opportunities here with 1 lap fewer in the race this afternoon. However, before that, we must get qualifying underway, and how we do it in Formula E, we of course have got the group stages of qualifying, 2 groups of 11 drivers, then we go into the duels, quarterfinals, semi-finals, then the finals, and that will decide the battle for pole position. Without further ado, let's get Group A qualifying underway. The green flag is out. 11 drivers heading onto the circuit, including Nick Cassidy, Oliver Rowland, Jake Dennis, Maximilian Günther, Stoffel Van Dorn, Sasha Fenestras, Sebastian Buemi, Robin Freinstan, Ticktum, who was quick in FP3 this morning, Jehan Daruvula, and Nick de Vries, who scored his 1st points yesterday. Very much looking forward to this one. Alongside myself, Tom Brooks, we've got Billy Munger, James Rossiter here in the commentary box. Billy, first of all, we had a cracking race yesterday which saw Mitch Evans taking the victory. His teammate Nick Cassidy, though, out in Q1 this morning, Group A this morning, I should say. He was really, really quick in FP3 this morning. 2 laps that got him to the top of the pile. Can he do in the business, though, today?
Yeah, I think Nick Cassidy is definitely going to be a man fueled with a bit of extra passion, let's say, in qualifying, because yesterday, well, one, his qualifying didn't go to plan because he didn't make it through the group. And also then in the race, there was that bit of controversy where he had the energy, he thought he was in a position where he could have taken the victory, and there was a slight, communication breakdown where the team decided to sort of favour Mitch Evans, I guess you could say, in that moment and take a 1-3. So, it made tricky circumstances last night. I'm sure the team and Nick have patched things up if there was any sort of breakdown in terms of their relationship. But now the focus is on the driving, on qualifying. And like I say, yesterday didn't quite go to plan for him, but I think today he's going to be a man on a mission, James.
Yeah, definitely. I think also, looking at this Group A, it looks much easier than the group that Nick Cassidy was in, where he finished 5th and got knocked out of this phase of qualifying yesterday. So I think he's going to be quite relieved the fact that it looks a little bit easier for him in this group. Also, Dan Ticktum has a great chance today of making it into the duels. And could we see him spring a huge surprise?
Yeah, home race for ERT this weekend. Lots of personnel that have come over, ready to watch the race. The grid was packed yesterday, full of people, but also especially down on both ERT cars for Sergio Sette Camara and for Dan Ticktum. As James said, of course, Dan Ticktum really quick in practice this morning, less than a tenth of a second away from Nick Cassidy. So there's a good opportunity there for them to spring a few surprises. And that car's been quick in quali this year.
Yeah, it has been quick in qualifying. Sette Camara has been, I guess, in the ERT, the one who's more managed to extract the maximum out of it in qualifying trim. I think Dan will have had a few opportunities. There's been a couple of moments earlier in the season where he didn't quite get the tyre strategy right, and that kind of affected things. But obviously, in free practice this morning, when Dan Ticktum looked quick, they were running, full power, 350 kilowatts. In this part of qualifying, they don't get that opportunity, so they're at 300 kilowatts. So whether that will have a factor in terms of the performance of that ERT car, we'll have to wait and see.
And in terms of the weather, it's a lot hotter today, James, than it was this time yesterday. We were expecting temperatures up in the early 30s, 32, 33 degrees for the E-Prix this afternoon.
Yeah, definitely. The sun came out after free practice 3 this morning, and it is really hot out there in the pit lane. I mean, it's going to be a huge challenge for these drivers to make the tyres last an entire lap.
Yeah, he is 5 seconds behind you. So double push, double push.
So 2 push laps then for Nick Cassidy in the early stages of qualifying. What we normally see in these group stages is we get 2 runs generally. So drivers will go out on track, they'll get a banker lap time in, then with about 5 minutes to go, they'll come back into the pits, new set of boots on the car, go out, do 1 final run, and then sort of last 2 minutes of the session, that's when it really starts to kick on.
Yeah, it always comes down to the last few stages of qualifying. A little bit of a few moments there in turn 6 there.
Yeah, really deep there for Nick Cassidy. A bit too late on the brakes. You can see the car moving around there, and then he just lost it just before the apex of the corner and ran quite wide and aborted that lap.
Going remarkably slowly there, actually, on the apex of turn 7. You've got to be a little bit careful because, of course, it's quite blind, quite fast going through that section. And with these cars, 11 of them on track, and especially given how tight it gets in this final sector, you don't want to be impeding and get a penalty for that.
Yeah, luckily, Tom, having driven the circuit on Friday, turn 7, the apex is so late in the corner that, you don't get down to it nice and early. So I think Nick Cassidy, won't have been impeding anyone there, being on the apex early on in the corner, because in Shanghai we have so many long apex corners where you think eventually there's an apex somewhere, but it feels like an eternity before you arrive at that point.
So Van Dorn fastest at this stage in the session. Across the timeline there goes Jehan Daruvla, pops himself up into second quickest. If you're new to Formula E, first of all, welcome along. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are in the world. If you're in the UK, thanks for staying up, or thanks for having a quick nap and getting here.
Take the other tyres out, we're way too hot, man.
And that's exactly what Cassie was talking about, complaining about the tyres overheating. Just a quick double yellow down at the first corner. That's now been cleared. Not entirely sure what that was about. Might be something to do with this man here, Jehan Daruvla. But anyway, yeah, tyres and temperature and getting them in that right operating window, it's going to be really, really difficult here. The cooler conditions yesterday certainly would have helped, but, here, as we said, with the hotter weather, there's a possibility that if they go for those 2 push laps, the second lap they might be useless.
Yeah, I think the strategy we saw in qualifying yesterday of sort of an out, a build, and then 2 push laps back to back, it might be quite different today, considering how much, the temperatures affect things. So, it will be interesting to see how the teams play it. Obviously, the first run here, they'll be learning as much as possible and trying to then correct any mistakes in terms of the strategy that they employ.
You can hear them scrubbing speed off with those tyres as they head through this final sector. I tell you, it was pretty clunky going through there. You know, the rest of the lap's quite open, quite wide, quite flowing, James. The last few corners here, turns 10, 11 and 12, it really tightens up. There's a proper bottleneck in there, and we saw that in the race yesterday.
Tight, twisty and narrow. And you've got such a wide circuit for the rest of the lap. They get all the confidence in the world that they can run 3 wide, and then suddenly they arrive there and they can't make it through there 2 wide. So yeah, definitely going to be a point to watch later on in the race. But in qualifying, you see they have to jump those curbs quite a lot. They have to put almost 2 wheels on the grass in order to get the lap time. Shorter distance is faster.
So 11 drivers out on track. Top 4 will go through into the duels. So we'll have the quarterfinals along the way after we've had the 2 group stages. Ollie Rowland just pops himself up into 4th place. Not a bad race from Ollie Rowland yesterday. 4th is where he finished at the checkered flag, just missing out on that podium right at the dying stages.
Yeah, he nearly made up for Cassidy and Verline having their near coming together. Well, they did actually make contact in the final couple of corners. So yeah, Oliver Rowland nearly capitalised on that himself. Ended up 4th. He's just been so consistent, Oliver Rowland. You know, you just think about all the podiums that he's been picking up, and the 4th place is pretty good result too.
Cassidy on a flyer here at the moment. Purple in Sector 1, purple in Sector 2, and Sector 3 not looking too bad either here for the Jaguar driver. 1:15 was the time he was setting in qualifying this morning, but he pops himself back into the pit lane at the end of this one. 5 minutes to go. I think he wants to get a new set of tyres on that, James.
Yeah, he's going to want to get a nice, cool set of tyres. He knows the time's there. He's going to have another shot to get this one done. Clearly he's got the pace inside the car, and I think that with cooler tyres, I think if he knew that that time was going to be P1, I think he might have stayed up.
Let's have a look at Ticton here.
It doesn't make sense though, because the tyres are in a good window. I don't know, it must be the carcass. I don't know, mate. It feels like the grip's better on the second lap.
So complaining about overheating of tyres, but did he get impeded here by Max Gunter? You can see Max looking in the mirror here as he slowed over to the pit entry.
No, he didn't get impeded. But I think one of the things that for a driver you can feel, oof, it takes a lot of curb there, is that, you know, sometimes when the front tyres are in, the car feels in a better window, but maybe the rear tyres aren't giving you quite the same amount of traction and lateral load, peak lateral load. So there's Dan saying, well, the tyres feel like they're in the right window. The question is the front axle and rear axle both in the right window at the same time?
Yeah, we've spoken a lot about setup of the car over the course of this weekend. You know, some drivers had a stronger front of the car compared to rear of the car, and vice versa. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah, 100%. Like I say, I touched on it earlier about the long apex corners here, and I think that highlights any setup imbalances even more, because you go into a corner, you have that strong front end, but the rear of the car can't hang on to it, then you're sliding all the way through these long corners, and once you start sliding, you can't really correct it and, you know, get things back on track. So it was interesting speaking to John-Eric Verne, because he got pole yesterday, but in the semi-final, in the first part of the lap, he had a wobble on the way in, and it cost him quite a lot of lap time, but he was able to correct it for the next lap. So all the drivers out there, they will be trying to learn as much as possible from these early laps in order to deliver when it counts at the end of this group qualifying.
Speaking of correcting, I must correct myself from earlier on. A 1:13.5 was the quickest time set by Nick Cassidy, but he did that twice in FP3 this morning, James.
Yeah, but that was in the 350 kilowatts. You know, we're in 300 kilowatts now. The fastest time we saw in 300 kilowatts yesterday in the group race was 14.1. So it is half a second a lap slower. I do think that's down to the sun being out today, which probably is making the track significantly hotter than we saw yesterday when we had the overcast conditions.
Yep, Sun certainly has got his hat on at this point. Just under 3 minutes left of the session. Down in towards turn 6 we go. Sasha Fenestraz needs a good weekend. Last he was in qualifying yesterday. His teammate Roland, as we know, has been exceptional so far this season. It has not been a brilliant 2024 so far for the French-Argentine driver, and he needs a good performance, as I said, with 5 races left this season. There's going to be a lot of questions being asked about whether he's going to be retaining that seat for next year at this point.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's a driver under pressure. He's got a great pedigree, Sasha, but it just feels like, you know, after a strong rookie season, he's failed to capitalise and deliver on that. You know, he was probably one of the drivers coming into the season we were looking at, you know, that potentially take things to the next level and, you know, be challenging the likes of the Jags and the Porsches. We see him cross the line up to second, then shortly replaced by Nick de Vries, so you can see the times are improving.
Yeah, less than 2 minutes now left for the session. Ticton just goes up into 4th quickest as well, so drivers are now really beginning to start pushing the envelope. Personal best and purple sector times coming in. Let's have a look at Cassidy coming through turn 8. Bit of a snap of oversteer. Gets it all gathered up though, but it will cost him time.
You can see here going through turn 8, he's just run a little bit wide, and all of a sudden this kink at 9 has become a bit of a corner, takes a bit of curb and it unsettles the car. Luckily we didn't have any cars running slowly offline there, because that could have quite easily been contact.
He's under a bit of pressure now. He's last at the moment in this group stage. We're running out of time quite quickly. He needs to get a lap in, especially as a man who's got the best sectors of anybody.
Well, he had the opportunity to get that banker in earlier on, if you remember. He was purple in those sectors and then bottled it into the pit lane. He'll be hoping he doesn't make a mistake on what could be his only flying lap.
Yeah, he went purple pits, didn't he? I mean, he obviously had confidence that he could deliver another strong lap later in the session, but like James has touched on, he needs to do it now because he's running out of time.
Yeah, he needs to hope that there's no yellow flags or anything like that as this session comes to a conclusion.
So then, less than 1 minute to go. Drivers now beginning to build themselves up for their one and only final flying lap in this session. At the moment, it's Van Dorn, De Vries, Fenestraz and Ticktum, the drivers that will be going through. Dennis at the moment is out, former champion of course, and Nick Cassidy as well, some big hitters. Buemi comes across the timeline to begin to build himself up.
There's a lot of grass there on the exit of turn 11. I wonder if someone's run off and dragged a whole load of dirt on. I do hope that the guys are able to improve on this final effort.
Well, down towards T1 we go with Sebastian Buemi. Envision needs a strong weekend. Points yesterday for Buemi as he came and was classified in 8th position at the checkered flag following a couple of penalties that were given out after the race. But his teammate Freund's out of the points after a spin. Both of these drivers in this session currently out of the group stages as it stands, as we come through the right-handed kink of turn 5 into the heavy braking zone of turn 6. Very easy to make a mistake into there, but all okay for Buemi. Not anything that's lighting up the timing screens in particular. Someone who is, though, is Nick Cassidy. He's just gone fastest of the lot in the first sector by a couple of tenths of a second.
Yeah, he's looking strong here. I hope that he can put this lap together. I mean, we've seen it so difficult to put the whole lap in together. Max Günther also purple in sector 2 right now.
Yeah, he's on a bit of a fly here as Günther. You saw him correcting the steering wheel there, just trying to find that balance between oversteer and the limits as you head through turn 6 and turn 7 into turn 8. Into the braking zone of turn 10 we go then, over the curbs of turn 11. A lot of curb there for Günther in the background as we see Buemi coming across the line. What's it going to be? Will it be an improvement? Don't think it will be. Improves in time, but it only goes 10th quickest. Günther pops himself into 4th place, knocks out Sacha Fenestraz at the moment. What can Fenestraz do? It's not enough. The Argentine French driver is out of group stage of qualifying once again. Cassidy made a mistake in the second sector. Can he gather it all up, though, and get himself through? He can. It's only 3rd quickest, though. There's still some drivers on fast laps. You've got Ticktum and Dennis in particular. Van Dorn looking handy in the 3rd sector. As well as we come to the line, De Ruvela comes over and is finished in 9th place. What about Jake Dennis? He's currently 8th quickest in this session. Needs to get into the top 4, and he doesn't improve. He's out of the group stages of qualifying, Jake Dennis. So it's Roland, Van Dorn, Cassidy and De Vries that make it through into the duels. 25 100ths of a second separating 4 drivers.
I have never seen the top 4 covered by such a small margin. That is absolutely incredible.
I mean, the gaps they've been small all weekend, haven't they? I feel like this circuit just really promotes that closeness in terms of lap time, particularly in qualifying. Oliver Rowland, though, you look at what he's been able to deliver, fastest again.
Come on. It was a good lap. We perform when it counts. Good job, guys.
Good stuff then for Oliver Rowland. Just a notice coming up on our timing screen that Max Günther and Dan Ticktum are under investigation for impeding. Both of those drivers out of the group stages. So let's see what will come as of that as we head into Group B qualifying.
Yeah, incredibly close there, and Max Günther just missing out. I mean, he is 18 thousandths away from making it into this duels, and I feel very sorry for that young man right there. He must have put in a cracking lap to be so close to the top of the times.
Yeah, very, very tight margins here. What have we got? 6 drivers separated by a 10th of a second. That's about as close as you want to get it. 11 drivers separated by 3/10 of a second. Group B is going to be even more exciting if that's anything to go by.
Well, there I was saying that Group A was the easy one.
Cassidy was very lucky, though.
Yeah, I think my last lap was too safe. Yeah, I knew I had one shot to put it together, so it was just too safe, last one.
And when I say lucky, I mean that in relative terms. Great lap time that he put in, but lucky there wasn't a yellow flag or anything that impeded that final lap.
Yeah, exactly. Leaving it to so late in the session can put you under a lot of pressure. And you could hear an element of pressure in Cassidy's voice there. You know, the fact that he said, I left a bit of margin there to make sure the lap was clean, obviously shows there's more potential to come from that Jaguar. But, you know, really, you know, when the championship balance is, you know, hanging by a thread, it's a tricky situation to find himself in.
I really think he regretted not putting in that banker lap and diving into the pits with 5 minutes to go, because if he'd had that, he'd have been a bit more confident.
Classification for Group A qualifying then. Oliver Rowland, Stoffel Van Dorn, Nick Cassidy and Nick de Vries are the 4 drivers that progress forwards. We say goodbye to Max Günther, Sasha Fenestras, Dan Ticktum and Jake Dennis, the reigning champion, once again out of group qualifying. Jehan Daruvula, Robin Freintz, as well as Edo Mortara also do not make the cut here this morning. Group B qualifying along the way next. Another 12-minute session featuring 11 drivers, as we see a disconsolate Jake Dennis once again giving himself a lot of hard work to do as we wait to see what his reaction will be. I can imagine a bit more frustration for the reigning world champion. See him there in the pit lane. Looks all okay so far, but I imagine a bit of work to do with getting that car set up and a competent race car here this afternoon. Let's have a look at Dan Ticktum as we head down into turn 10. Snap of oversteer, the rear looking quite unstable. Oh, he had to go over the grass into turn 11 as well. So we're ready to go then for Group B qualifying here in Shanghai for round 12. It's Pascal Wehrlein, Mitch Evans, Jean-Eric Vergne, Antonio Felix da Costa. Just a few names that are in this one. There's a raft of talent as there is in Formula E, but this one, we saw, what, 25,000 separating 4 drivers making it into the duels. This could be even tighter by all my reckoning.
When you think the session can't get any closer in Formula E, that's when they surprise you, and that's when it does get even closer. So, yeah, 2.5 hundredths of a second is nothing. Honestly, it's so hard to describe how small of a margin that is in terms of, you know, distance on the race circuit, you know, from everyone crossing the line on their qualifying laps. It's next to nothing.
And as a driver, you just know that there was that difference in your lap. You can think about probably 3 or 4 things, Billy, where you just know, if I'd just done this perfectly, if I'd just turned in a little bit earlier, if I'd just picked up the throttle a little bit earlier, that lap time was there.
Oh, 100%. One little snap probably is those couple of hundredths that we're talking about. So, yeah, incredibly tight, and all the drivers that are on the wrong side of that margin will be kicking themselves.
Let's have a listen in here. Just caught the end of that conversation there with Ollie Rowland, having a quick chat with his race engineer.
So that's tyre preparation they're talking about there. It's which of these sets is going to cool down the right amount, because you want the tyres to be in the right window for the duels later.
So Group B lineup then as we get ready for this one. Pascal Wehrlein, Mitch Evans, Jean-Eric Vergne, pole sitter from yesterday, Antonio Felix da Costa, Sam Burton, Jake Hughes, the Neon McLaren duo, Norman Nato, who got into the duels again yesterday, as well as Nico Muller, Sergio Sette Camara, Edo Mortara, Lucas de Grassi, all in this group. Looking forward to seeing what these 11 drivers are going to be able to do. Of course, they'll know what the track is like because they've just seen people like this man going out and putting in good lap times.
Yeah, they know the track's in a good place. They'll know that the end of the session is where the fastest lap times are likely to come. So again, it just, you know, it just reiterates the fact that, you know, this is a close qualifying session and they need to have the car in the right window and be confident with what they've got underneath them when it comes down to crunch time.
So down the start finish straight we go. Mitch Evans, Antonio Felix da Costa, Pascal Wehrlein beginning their first laps in this session. 300 kilowatts of power for these drivers in the group stages, to remind you. Very, very fine margins we've seen in Formula E this weekend at this 3-kilometre long Shanghai circuit. Our first visit here, or our first return to China since Sanya in 2019. And of course, this is the country where Formula E began back in 2014 as well, when we kicked off what has been a global revolution in motorsport in Beijing. But now here at this historic circuit, which has played host to Formula 1 events over the years and the World Endurance Championship. A lot of drivers have got a wealth of experience here, including the likes of Antonio Felix da Costa. Of course, he's raced here in WEC over the years as well for Porsche. This year, solely focused on his Formula E campaign. And he's having something of a bit of a swan song to the end of his season, fresh off the back of that victory in Berlin.
Yeah, he is indeed. Obviously, he'll be gutted with the situation yesterday of getting that post-race penalty, dropping himself outside of the points. He was I think a little bit frustrated with the situation he's found himself in at Porsche, where because of his slow start to the season and Pascal Wehrlein's strong start to the season, he's found himself as a bit of a rear gunner there, James, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that, the slow start to the season, but also having that wind taken away from him in Misano really knocked sort of the wind out of his sails. I mean, he's won 2 races on the road. You know, the question is, can he add a third one later on this season?
Well, we just saw Sergio Sette-Camera's teammate Dan Tickton not making it through into the duel stages. He was really quick in FP3 this morning. Opportunity now beckons for Sette-Camera, and the pressure's on his shoulders to try and deliver at ERT's home race.
Yeah, it shows that, you know, there is a difference in with the track temperatures increasing, that free practice, free times aren't everything to go off. You know, we've seen people make mistakes in qualifying already in the Group A, and it's about, you know, getting it right at the right time. As Jake Hughes goes to the top of the timesheets, he has been quick in qualifying trim, Jake Hughes. It is clear to see, obviously getting that pole position in Misano too. For him, he'll be hoping to, you know, put a whole, you know, day together and not only be quick in qualifying, but he needs big points, really, Jake Hughes. He's a driver that there's an element of pressure on, considering the debut of Taylor Barnard and how he was able to, you know, deliver some point-scoring finishes for McLaren.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's still the first podium eluding Jake Hughes at this stage, and now in his 2nd season of Formula E, and you're completely spot on with what you say about Taylor Barnard and the emphatic debut he had with points in Berlin a fortnight ago. Da Costa, top of the pile then, with Hughes in 2nd, Evans in 3rd, and Sergio Sette-Camera in 4th place. Bit of dust being kicked up there by Jean-Eric Vergne, pole sitter yesterday. The thing is with these double headers, James, we've seen drivers go well on Saturday. That hasn't necessarily translated into speed on Sunday, and vice versa.
Well, the problem is, if you do a good job on Saturday and then the weather conditions are different on Sunday, you still have to adapt your car, you have to make the setup changes, you have to do everything. So maybe you were in the sweet spot yesterday, but that sweet spot isn't in the same place. I mean, you've got to go searching for it. And maybe sometimes, you know, if you're on pole, you can have a bit too much comfort.
I thought Sector 1 was good, but Sector 2 and 3 bad.
Sector 1 was good. Sector 1 is good, mate. We've got it. We've just got to keep doing the same thing.
I'm finding it really interesting. Sector 1, particularly with, you know, McLaren, their engineers and the drivers, it was something in qualifying yesterday where Jake Hughes was constantly being talked to by his engineer saying, turn 3, you know, you're losing a 10th of a second, and he kept reiterating that point. So maybe that's just a part of the circuit where McLaren are slightly struggling compared to other cars, and it seems like a conscious thing on their mind that, you know, they want to know how they're getting on in that part of the lap.
The only problem I can see is Sector 1, if you take too much from your tyres, you'll do a great Sector 1, but you'll struggle when you get to the end of the lap. And I wonder if Sam's taking a little bit too much out of the tyres, doing a great Sector 1, and then the tyres just aren't hanging on for the end of this lap.
He's still relatively recent from the return of his wrist injury as well. I imagine that's probably a factor, because he did 160 laps on in the simulator. Yesterday he was saying his hand is still, it's not 100% by any stretch of the imagination. He's still struggling with it.
It's hard to drive these cars when you're at 100%, Tom, let alone when you've got the situation Sam's found himself in with that, you know, damage to his wrist. So it's a tricky one, because as a racing driver, you want to be behind the wheel and driving at every opportunity, and you don't want to be giving opportunities fundamentally to drivers that potentially could take your seat. And with Taylor Barnard delivering how he has, I know that Sam will have had a thought, you know, that potentially that's someone to watch out for.
Yeah, CC David Malukas. James, what have you seen?
So we just saw Sam really struggling in the last part of the lap, and then we saw his teammate Jake Hughes, nice clean last sector, jump straight to the top of the times.
So down in towards the right-hander of turn 10 we go. There is Norman Nato, Mitch Evans. Now all the drivers are going to come back into the pit lane, get a new set of boots on the car. Wehrlein's in the pits. He's down in 11th place at the moment, so he needs a strong lap. The problem is he's under pressure, like we saw with Nick Cassidy a few minutes ago in Group A.
It's interesting, the two championship, you know, protagonists, first and second in the championship, are the ones that in the early stages of qualifying are struggling the most. You know, both of them are currently, well, Nick Cassidy was 11th, managed to deliver on that final lap. Pascal Wehrlein will be hoping it's not all down to the final lap, that he puts himself in the same position where if he makes a mistake, it could be, you know, a tricky start in terms of his day and positioning himself for the race later on today.
Yeah, we saw Vergne kicking up a bit of dust, and that was why, just clattering over the curbs at turn 11. Let's have a look as a driver's eye view. So he's going into turn 10, clips the grass, turn 11. Oh, that'll send your fillings out your back of your teeth, I reckon.
You could really hear that, couldn't you, over the curb? It really sounded aggressive, and like the car took a huge bit of force going up. You could see he's being very aggressive with his curb usage, and he lands sort of on top of the curb. He takes off on the initial part of it and then landed at the bottom of the car on the second half of the curb.
Well, straight off to the chiropractor after this session then for Jean-Eric Vergne. Sits in 6th fastest at the moment. Gap's relatively large compared to what we've seen further down the order, but there's still a few minutes remaining of this session, and I'm sure plenty of opportunity. Now you can see the drivers in the garage. This is Nico Müller. He's been the standout performer at Apps Cupra this year. Of course, a new dawn beckons for them with the Lola-Yamaha partnership going into season 11 next year.
So Porsche have sent Pascal straight out there, no time wasted whatsoever to try and get his lap in. They don't want to leave this to chance, you know, as Billy touched on. Nick Cassidy left himself under a lot of pressure. We heard from Nick, he was really struggling to make sure that he did that lap with the right amount of pushing, you know, conservative, delivering the lap, making sure he made it into groups. And now Pascal, huge pressure on him and Porsche to get the job done.
It's so hard to deliver a lap when you're, you know, worried about making a mistake. If you're not driving at 100% as a racing driver, sometimes it's easy to make mistakes, James, isn't it? Because, you know, you're overthinking in situations, you know, maybe easing the braking point back a metre, all of a sudden that changes the behaviour of the car when you get to the apex.
Well, speaking of the apex, Vergne just missing it by a fraction into turn 10.
This lap's not good enough. He's 2.5 tenths off in sector 1.
So Vergne needs a bit of a scorcher. 2.5 minutes left of this session, so there's a good opportunity for him to try and improve as we look at that driver's eye view through turn 8 into turn 9. But you can see him fighting away at the wheel. It's like the car's just not in the right operating window at the moment.
It doesn't look nice to drive out there for Pascal Vergne. He will need to really try and figure out how to get on top of the balance of his car. What's his curb usage like? A little bit less than what we saw from Jean-Eric Vergne, but still quite aggressive over the curbs through 11 as he comes across the line up to 4th, so he is in. The final sector from him was good.
For now, but the time needed, as you can see.
I don't know what's wrong, but I have so much oversteer, it's incredible.
I think that's him really struggling with the rear tyres. I mean, you have to have the front and rear in harmony, and if you don't, you know, you turn into the corner and it just feels like the rear's floating, and then you have no confidence at all to carry the right speed into the high-speed corners.
We saw him correcting the car going through those long sweeping corners there. You know, he's like a cheater on an ice rink trying to just get some grip, isn't he, and some rear traction.
Yeah, he definitely was struggling with the rear grip, it's fair to say. It'd be interesting to see how he approaches this cool-down lap, because he's going to have an opportunity to cool down the car, and you can do things with your driving style. As we see his teammate Da Costa go to the top of the timesheets. This is a replay of him coming through the last couple of corners.
He keeps it clean. He stayed off the curb there in turn 10, monsters the curb in 11, but he's lined up perfectly for the final corner in 12. He's driving perfectly. He's a man on a mission today, Da Costa.
Well, let's see what Da Costa is able to deliver. Norman Nato currently out of the duels. A minute just over left of this session, and opportunity beckons for some drivers. Big hitters at the moment. Norman Nato, Jean-Eric Vergne, pole sitter from yesterday. He'll be able to put in a strong performance. And Sam Bird, he will not be happy with 10th quickest in qualifying as it stands. He's some half a second away. And now the drivers are going to really begin to build themselves up for their one and only final flying lap in this session.
Jean-Eric Vergne, he did deliver a personal best in the first sector on this lap, but the middle sector, something's gone on, so he's backed off completely from this lap. So again, he'll find himself in a position similar to Nick Cassidy, where it's a one-lap shootout now. He has to get this lap right.
Massive pressure now on Pascal Vergne's shoulders, because I'm sure a few of them have got the potential to take that spot in the duels away from him.
Bird's on a personal best here in the first sector. Looks like he got it nice and hooked up coming through turn 6, but we'll keep an eye out and see what the rest of the times are as we head through that long left-hander. You can see him again soaring away at the wheel, just trying to balance it on the ragged edge of adhesion through there.
It's what he was saying this morning. He's got understeer, then oversteer, then understeer. It looks not nice to drive, to be perfectly honest. If he can get it through, I'll be impressed.
Down into turn 10 we go, heavy braking zone on the lap. Checker flag is now out, so this will be Bird's banker then as we come around the final corner. Across the timing line he goes 4th quickest. At the moment that's good enough, but it's a couple of tenths of a second away, and a lot of other drivers are improving. Vergne at the moment as it stands is out of this session. Nato's on a hot one here as well in sector 2. He's just 15,000th of a second away from the fastest time set by Jake Hughes, who's ended the session at the top.
Vergne's not going to make it. He's 3 tenths off in this lap.
This is the problem, isn't it? You don't set a banker lap time in the early stages of the session. We saw that with Cassidy in Group A, and now it's come back to bite Vergne in the backside here at the end of this session. Nato clatters over the curbs. Vergne is indeed out of qualifying. Nato goes up the 4th, knocks out Sam Bird then. Anybody else on a push lap? Evans improves over in third place in time, but stays third quickest. What about Jean-Eric Vergne? Pole yesterday. Is he going to be out of qualifying? He is. He doesn't make it into the duels for round 12. What a difference a day makes for Jean-Eric Vergne as Mortara goes up into 10th place at the end of the session. De Grassi just pips him up there into 10th place. And Sete Camera can only do 8th best as it stands at the end of Group B qualifying. Well, big drama there. Two big names, Jean-Eric Vergne and Pascal Wehrlein, out.
And a man who's delivered there, 2 and a bit tenth advantage over the rest of the field. Jake Hughes, he was so unlucky yesterday in the quarterfinals. He came up against Pascal Wehrlein. He actually set the second quickest lap in the quarterfinals, but found himself knocked out. But a good lap today.
Yeah, mate, that'll do. That'll do.
That'll do.
Oh, I love it when you say that.
Yeah, cracking effort there from Jake Hughes. You know, he's been really fast this weekend. He needs to put it together now in the duels. And, I mean, if he's got that much pace in this car, he's got a great chance to deliver finally a strong race this afternoon.
Well, let's see what Jake Hughes is going to be able to do as we head into the quarterfinals. Fastest in that session. So the good news is he hasn't got to go up against Pascal Wehrlein because he managed to knock him out in Group B. Let's have a look here at Norman Nato making his way through. See him wrenching away at the wheel through the final couple of corners. He's going to run, I think, a little bit wide just on the exit there, but the car not looking too clever through that final sector of the lap. He just about managed to make it through, though.
Yeah, he did manage to make it through. He managed to do what his teammate Jake Dennis didn't manage in Group A. So, I mean, that is some promise for Andretti, but it's not been the turnaround they had in Berlin in terms of qualifying. You know, on day 1 in Berlin, they were nowhere. They managed to get the data from Porsche, make some setup changes, and found themselves first and third on the grid. Obviously, they've got one driver through now to the quarterfinals, but yeah, it hasn't been the turnaround maybe I think a few people were expecting from Andretti.
Well, one lap fewer in the race this afternoon as well. We're expecting a faster paced race compared to what we saw yesterday. I mean, you know, away from the lights, it was like watching somebody pull away from a Tesco's car park or something like that. They were taking it so slowly because nobody wanted to lead down towards the first corner. Wehrlein now has given himself the arduous task of having to fight his way through the field, and obviously that is in the danger zone because there could be more contact.
Yeah, Pascal's going to have a completely different race to what he had yesterday, where he was the driver who decided to take that, you know, initiative and lead the race for maybe too long. He was describing it because at the end of the race he did find himself with quite an energy shortage, but you know, I think he would have preferred to be leading the race and dictating it than now finding himself, you know, in that mid-pack where there's danger of, you know, losing a front wing end plate and, you know, putting yourself in a bit of a precarious situation.
Well, there we are. Pascal Wehrlein out of Group B qualifying. Jean-Eric Vergne also as well. Hughes, Da Costa, Evans and Nato go forwards into the quarterfinals, coming along the way here in a few minutes. Well, the sunshine is out then here in Shanghai, and we look forward to the quarterfinals. It'll be Nick Cassidy and Stoffel van Dorn along the way. First of all, here is Nick Cassidy then, championship leader. Third place for him at the checkered flag, but of course points were taken out of his lead, courtesy of Pascal Wehrlein, finishing second yesterday. Let's get confirmation of the results from Group B then. Jake Hughes, Antonio Felix da Costa, Mitch Evans and Norman Nato are the 4 drivers that will progress forwards into the duels. We lose Jean-Eric Vergne, Sam Bird, championship contender Pascal Wehrlein down there in 7th place. Sergio Sete Camera, Nico Muller, Lucas Di Grassi and also Edo Mortara do not make the cut into the duel stages for round 12 here. So big drama, and very much looking forward to seeing what is going to happen. There is Stoffel van Dorn. He'll be out in the car in a few moments time with the full 350 kilowatts worth of power. Van Dorn and the DS Penske team have looked pretty handy so far this weekend. Well, the DS Penske team in general, I should say, because Vergne, yes, they got into the duels and got on to pole position. Didn't translate necessarily into the finishing position that they would have wanted at the checkered flag. Vergne was sixth on the road. Whereas, of course, Stoffel van Dorn did not have a particularly brilliant day at the office either. 9th was his finishing position in round 11. See a lot of support for the Brazilian drivers here this weekend. They'll be hoping for better fortunes for Sergio Sete Camera and for Lucas Di Grassi come the race, compared to the qualifying where they both unfortunately did not make the cut for the duels. And now suited and booted once again here for Nick Cassidy. And hopefully he will be able to put in the performances that we've seen from him in the free practice sessions later on here today. As I said, fastest in free practice 3 this morning. Going up against Stoffel van Doorn, though, it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to be able to outperform the Belgian driver. In the other quarterfinals, we've got Nick de Vries versus Oliver Rowland. You would expect, given Rowland's prowess in qualifying this year, that he will be the driver who emerges on top. But again, one lap and opportunities for mistakes. Mitch Evans, Antonio Felix da Costa as well going head-to-head. And Norman Nato versus Jake Hughes. So some very exciting action to come. Of course, another 4 drivers from the quarterfinals will go through into the semis to have 2 groups of 2. And then we'll have 2 drivers going head-to-head to see in which order they will arrive on the front row of the grid. So, some slow-mos we look at from the group stages of qualifying. Quarterfinals and the duels will be on the way next. Really looking forward to seeing what is going to happen here in the scorching sunshine in Shanghai.
Well, that was an unbelievably tight Group A. 25 thousandths of a second between the top 4. I don't think we've ever seen such a tight qualifying session. But obviously, congratulations to Oliver Rowland getting through, but commiserations for Jake Dennis not.
Yeah, tough one for Jake Dennis. It was so close, as you said, the tightest qualifying we've ever seen. And Max Günther, who was in 5th place, 43 thousandths off the pace. I mean, unbelievably close. Yeah, very tough and challenging out there for everyone.
Yeah, it is indeed. Well, let's take a look at that moment that, well, basically the difference, I suppose, between what happened to Pascal Wehrlein and also Jake Dennis with Billy.
So I'm down here at the E-pad now. Going to take a little look. First of all, at the start of Jake Dennis's lap. This is where we heard him on the, obviously on the radio, sort of complaining about the car balance. Didn't quite have what he needed to have to get through. Slowed it down for you here. So you look at his steering wheel as he comes through turn 1 and 4. A big kick of oversteer takes him away from the apex. Just not the start to lap Jake Dennis would have wanted, and that put him on the back foot, eventually running out of pace and losing position, not making it through to the duels, which is obviously disappointing for him. Then we're going to go straight across to Pascal Wehrlein. Again, another championship contender. This is on board with him here as we come through, and you can look at the rear grip. And again, I'm going to slow it down for you. 7 and 8 long apex corners where you need to have the right balance. You can see the soaring effect at the wheel that Pascal Wehrlein's got going on here. Just really hasn't got the car where he wants it. You can see again as you go through 8 here, just constant movement and fighting on the steering wheel. It's just not what you need to be quick round here. It's really been a tricky day. The temperatures are higher. The situation up there for Jake Dennis and Pascal Wehrlein in qualifying, where they didn't have the car underneath them, now means they're out of qualifying and they're going to have more work to do in the race today.
Brilliant, thanks so much for that, Billy. Yeah, let's talk about Group B as well. Again, it was tight, but not as tight as we saw in Group A. Commiserations for Pascal Wehrlein. How much work has he got to put in to finish on the podium?
Well, yeah, he was knocked out in P7, not the way he wanted to start his day. He's got a huge challenge ahead of him, but also clearly he's not comfortable in his car, as we saw from the analysis with Billy there. His teammate, by contrast, P2 in the session, completely comfortable with his Porsche.
And let's talk about what a great moment for McLaren, for Jake Hughes, quickest of Group B.
Yeah, amazing lap from him. That was a stunning, stunning lap. He would put himself a couple of tenths in front of everybody when we were just discussing how close the other session was. Mega lap from him. Let's see if he can put it together in the duels.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw yesterday how Nick Cassidy climbed from P10 to finish on the podium. So we know that being in that mid-pack, it's very much possible to move your way up the grid. But we've got a couple of laps less in today's race. How much of an effect will that have during the race?
Well, you got more energy per lap if you divide it up. So that's one thing. But let's not forget, Cassidy started 10th yesterday. Pascal's going to start around 14th. That's a vast difference, and it's going to be a much bigger challenge for him to fight through.
But then, out of all the cars, you know, the Porsche powertrain, it's not only fast, but it's very efficient.
It is, but it's going to be tough today. We've got different weather conditions. It's so hot sat out here in the pit lane. So, yeah, it's going to be a very tough day for the boys.
Yeah, it will. Well, we know who the top 8 drivers are going to be on the grid, but we don't know how they're going to line up, and we don't know who is going to claim pole position. Let's find out how they get on now in the quarters, the semis, and the final stages here in qualifying. Time to go over to our commentator, Tom Brooks.
So then, ready to go for the quarterfinals for round 12 of the 2024 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. The 2 group stages are done and dusted. We've got our 8 drivers that are progressing forwards into the quarters. Who will go through into the semis? Who will go through into the finals? Those are the questions. Now we need to find out what the answers will be. Nick Cassidy versus Stoffel van Dorn first of all, as well as Nick de Vries and Oliver Rowland to come. Let's have a look at some highlights though before we get into the duels and have a look at the group stages of qualifying. Group A went out on track and it was so tight in terms of the times. Hot conditions out there and scorching lap times being set by the drivers as well. Just 25,000 eventually separating 4 drivers into the duels, Billy.
Yeah, absolutely nothing to separate the drivers in the first part of qualifying. They were really, some drivers, fairly unlucky, I think you can say. When you lose it by a few hundredths, you know that there'll be that lap time somewhere around the lap, a little correction that you could have avoided. So that almost makes it harder, Tom, where you know it's so close.
Yeah, we saw Gunther, by the way, under investigation for impeding at the end of the session, and likewise Dan Ticktum as well. So we'll bring you any updates that we receive on that throughout the remainder of qualifying. There was a snap of oversteer for Nick Cassidy. He did manage to put a banker lap time in, very luckily at the end of the session, to get himself through. Left a little bit on the table, but you know, he was fortunate there were no yellow flags, nothing getting in his way. Otherwise, he would have been out of qualifying in the Group A stages.
We've definitely seen situations where that final lap, you think you're going to have, you know, a clean track, and it doesn't present itself. You have an opportunity where a yellow flag or something like that pops out. So Nick Cassidy, fairly fortunate, I think you can say, to have that situation unfold, have the pressure on his shoulders and still manage to deliver and get through to the duels.
Well, speaking of out of qualifying, a couple of big hitters in the group stages include this man here, Jean-Eric Vergne. We just saw Jake Dennis on the screen a few minutes ago in Group A. He was out of qualifying as well, the former championship leader. This is his teammate Norman Nato, who's been on great form this weekend and did manage to progress forwards. Likewise, Antonio Felix da Costa in the Porsche as well. He'll go head-to-head with that man, Mitch Evans. This is Norman Nato completing the lap. The big surprise in Group B qualifying was that Nick de Vries in the Mahindra, first points on the board yesterday, and he's now got a bit of confidence underneath him seemingly as he makes it through into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, he's definitely come back with a vengeance from, you know, having, you know, Berlin, you know, not being behind the wheel, coming back after a strong, a disappointing, start to the season for him. That confidence he's built from yesterday is translated into, you know, getting through to the quarterfinals.
Well, let's have a look then. This is the lineup for the quarterfinals. Nick Cassidy versus Stoffel van Dorn, Nick de Vries versus Oliver Rowland, Mitch Evans and Antonio Felix da Costa, Norman Nato and Jake Hughes. Out of the 8 drivers here, only 4 will go forwards into the semis, a further 2 from that into the finals, and that will decide who lines up on the front row of the grid. But of course, we've got to work out in which order that will be. Well, the sunshine is out, conditions are fairly hot. James, you've just been outside. What's it like down on the ground? Is it still as humid as it was earlier?
Scorching out there in the pit lane. It is really hot. The temperature's increased. The track temperature has come up a lot from yesterday. I mean, I don't know where they're measuring that. That's got to be in the shade, because it's definitely hotter than that in the sunshine.
62% humidity as well. Did you put an underlayer on under that shirt?
Unfortunately not, no.
Oh dear, we're going to have to find another solution for you and see if we can keep the sweat marks away, perhaps. Anywho, on to the duels then. Looking forward to this one. This is Mitch Evans. He'll be out 3rd of the groups with Antonio Felix da Costa, this man here in the Tag Heuer Porsche. Again, not a foregone conclusion, that one, because da Costa has found great form in this second half of the season. Unlucky to pick up that penalty, though, yesterday.
Well, he could pick up the penalty yesterday, but today he could pick up the 3rd victory on the road that he would have had this season. So, man very much in form right now.
Oliver Rowland as well. The boy from Barnsley, as we know, imperious form in qualifying throughout the 2024 season, and a good opportunity for him to try and capitalise in that Nissan. And Nick de Vries, his first appearance in the duels for Mahindra.
Nick de Vries has found himself in a position by getting through the group stage of qualifying. He's got nothing to lose, and although he's coming up against Oliver Rowland, we saw how tight the margins were in group qualifying. So for me, it's still all to play for. I don't think any of those quarterfinals, it's a foregone conclusion about who's going to make it through.
Quarterfinal 1 then, Nick Cassidy versus Stoffel Vandoorne. 84% reckon it's going to go the way of the Kiwi in the Jaguar. But we know that DS Penske's been pretty handy so far this year, so we'll see what happens. 350 kilowatts of power now for the drivers, a further 50 kilowatts compared to what we had in the group stages. So a bit more go underneath your right foot, but of course you've got to adjust your driving style with that. You're arriving into the heavy braking zones that bit faster.
Well, you're also putting a lot more load through the rear tyres. You've got more power, so you're going to accelerate more, you're going to stress the rear tyres more, and in these hotter conditions, it's going to be really critical to keep the rear tyres hanging on for the end of the lap.
For me, I think this is the most unknown part of qualifying. Obviously, when you have the group qualifying, you've got more than one lap to build that confidence and know what you've got underneath you. Quarterfinals, this is their first lap with 350 kilowatts. So there is so much, difference in terms of braking points, how they can, how that affects the car balance in the middle of the corners. So a lot to learn in a short space of time.
See, our virtual race engineer says that Hughes is getting the best out of his tyres without a prep lap. He's in them into the right operating window. So that sets him up quite nicely for the duels, and I suppose, well, the teams will have now seen that graphic, so they'll know that they can try and do the same.
Well, I want to see if your virtual engineer is correct. I'm not sure he is.
Okay. Well, let's wait and find out.
I'll challenge him for the rest of this session.
All right, I can see an arm wrestle coming on before the end of this year. Down through turn 8 into turn 9 we go then, building up momentum here for Nick Cassidy. Unlucky to miss out on the duels yesterday. 10th on the grid is where he started to come through to take a podium finish at the checkered flag, a 1-3 for Jaguar. Can he, though, elevate himself into the semis here? Let's see what he can do as he comes across the line.
He's leaning on the rear axle a lot on the exit of that final corner to start his lap.
This is a huge moment for Nick Cassidy. Yesterday, he lost out by 3 points by finishing third to Pascal Wehrlein finishing second. This is a chance for him to regain those points with Pascal having a difficult qualifying and not making it out of the groups.
So, here we go with Stoffel Vandoorne, the Belgian driver, Season 8 champion, of course. Now comes across the line in the DS Penske. What does it look like in towards the first corner? Bit of rear instability going through there. A couple of bites at the cherry as he tries to get that car rotated through the long, sweeping first corner. 24.8 in the first sector for Nick Cassidy. We need to see what Vandoorne's is relative to that, though.
I think that's quite a good first sector from Nick Cassidy. Yeah, that's up there with what we saw yesterday.
Well, they were a little bit slower the times yesterday, of course, compared with the hot temperature as well. Vandoorne, 24.9 for him in that first sector. So he's about a tenth of a second shy of Nick Cassidy. Doesn't sound like a lot, but given the margins that we've seen so far today, that's about a fortnight.
And he was a little bit deep there, Vandoorne, in turn 6. We just got the second half of the corner from his onboard, so he's got a bit of work to do. He's coming up to the middle sector point, pretty much exactly the same as Nick Cassidy, so he has got, just under a tenth to find in the final part of the lap.
So Cassidy, bit of a snap of oversteer there through turn 12. Across the line he goes, 1:13.762 for the Jaguar driver then. What about Vandoorne? Can he close up in this final sector? He's just under a tenth of a second shy of the time set by Cassidy. Clunks it over the curves. Snap of oversteer though. That'll cost him a tenth of a second or so, but he's been catching in this final sector. He comes across the line and he knocks out Nick Cassidy by 0.06 of a second. Stoffel Vandoorne with a superlative final couple of sectors does manage to get the better. He was a tenth and a half clear of Cassidy in that final sector, in fact. And he manages to get through into the semi-finals.
You could see Cassidy had a bit of a wobble through turn 9. He lost the rear a little bit, and I wonder if that just put him a little bit less confidence going into the final 3 corners. And Vandoorne nailed it perfectly. He took the right amount of curb, jumped all over the grass in turn 11. Absolutely nailed that last sector. Impressive stuff from Stoffel.
Well, not the qualifying that Nick Cassidy wanted. 2 titans going at it, one competing for the title, one a former world champion. And it is the former world champion who knocks out the man who wants to try and claim that crown at the end of this year. Quarterfinal 2, Nick de Vries versus Oliver Rowland. 86% reckon it'll go the way of Rowland. Given his form in qualifying so far this year, you'd be hard to bet against that.
The thing is, for de Vries, this is going to be a huge challenge. He's not been in a duel before, so jumping to this 350 kilowatts to readjust and recalibrate is quite challenging.
Oliver Rowland's going to have an extra bit of motivation considering he's going up against Mahindra, who he was driving for last season. So, you know, there's an element of he wants to outperform that team, considering, you know, their end to the relationship, which wasn't the finest.
No, not exactly the most harmonious. Sector 1, 25 flat for Nick de Vries. We have seen faster. We were 24.8 a few moments ago between Cassidy and Van Dorn. Roland already looking pretty quick in those first couple of corners in the mini sector, as it were. So de Vries, he's got pace underneath him, but I don't think it's going to be enough to depose Roland, unless, of course, Roland does make a mistake. Only one flying lap, and we saw a mistake costing Cassidy a couple of moments ago.
Sector 2 for de Vries, quick though, and Roland actually not delivering that much more lap time in the first part of the lap there, James.
No, spot on, Billy. That's quicker than Stoffel or Nick Cassidy there in Sector 2 from de Vries. Very impressive stuff.
Car looking pretty hooked up through those long sweeping corners of turn 7 and 8 through into turn 10 we go. Not clunking over the curbs as much as we've seen some drivers, just leaving a bit of margin on the table. What's it look like though as he comes out of the final corner? It's a 13.817 then for Nick de Vries. A couple of tenths of a second slower than we saw from Stoffel Van Dorn. Here comes Roland through. He's lost a bit of time in that second sector compared to de Vries. He's losing time further still. So could Nick de Vries be on for a spot in the semi-finals in his first ever visit to the duels in 2024? Around the final corner we go. Roland's going to have the mother and father of all final sectors. Kicks up dust. He tries to gain time, but it's not enough. And Nick de Vries in Mahindra manages to knock out Oliver Roland. Absolutely fantastic. Mahindra watching on in disbelief.
What is going on in these duels? They're surprising us and clearly the fans at home, because the predictor from the guys at home favoured the wrong person.
Okay, you've done it, mate. Well done. So back round to the box. Brilliant job.
Well, first time in the duels and beginner's luck then for Nick Cassidy. Sorry, for Nick de Vries, I should say, rather. Phenomenal job.
There's a couple of upsets we've had so far, but the difference in the line and last sector interests me. Nick de Vries actually gaining a lot of his advantage in that final part of the lap and taking less curbs. So I wonder where people have been using that line throughout the whole weekend, whether it's just starting to get a little bit too much now.
Quarterfinal 3, Mitch Evans versus Antonio Felix da Costa. Evans then begins his flying lap. Pressure is now on because his teammate has just been knocked out.
What? Two of the title protagonists have been knocked out. Mitch is one of them. If he can take the 3 points here and get himself on pole, he's going to have a big advantage going into the race. Yeah,
it won't do him any harm at all. What about the DAC attack then? Antonio Felix da Costa, 6th on the grid. Yesterday we've managed to slow these 2 laps down so we can get a side-by-side comparison as we head through those first corners.
Mitch Evans there looking like he was taking a slightly different line, but running a little bit wide in the early stages of turn 1 there. So there's a little difference, a subtle difference in terms of the line. Now they come up to the exit of 4. What's the traction looking like? Actually doesn't look too bad for Mitch Evans. Antonio Felix da Costa a little bit struggling with the traction, having to run onto the exit curb before the kink at 5. And now they go down into turn 6. What's it looking like at the apex? Da Costa's deep.
Yeah, losing time there for da Costa. That's going to cost him as he comes out of turn 6 into the left of turn 7. So they're pretty even Stevens in the second sector. Da Costa a fraction faster. So Evans just doesn't seem to have the pace underneath him. Maybe they can't get the tyres switched on, James.
Well, I think both of them are super, super close. We're going to have to see how Antonio is going to attack this last sector. We've seen different lines through there the whole way through this group qualifying and the duel. So let's see if Antonio can get it done.
So final couple of corners then left, clattering over it for Mitch Evans and da Costa. And as they come to the timing line, it's going to be very close between them, but da Costa does it, a 1:13.752. So that's another championship contender out of qualifying in the quarterfinals. We've just seen Nick Cassidy go out. Evans has done the same. Oliver Roland has gone for a Burton as well. Verline was out in the group stages, as well as Jake Dennis. What is going on?
We've had 3 quarterfinals, and the predictor vote has got the wrong driver each time.
Yes. Yes. Just through. Good job. In the procedure.
Well, the other interesting thing for me is the fact that the guys who lose in this phase in the quarterfinals, your grid position is based off your lap time still from this section. And Nick Cassidy is so far the fastest of the losers.
Well, there's an accolade. Quarterfinal 4, Norman Nato versus Jake Hughes then. Ignore the predictor, it's been wrong every time so far, so let's see what happens here. Jake Hughes, we know he has got good form. He took pole position in Misano earlier this year, but Norman Nato, very handy around this Shanghai circuit. He's been quick in the free practice sessions so far this weekend. Yesterday, he was 7th on the grid. His teammate, though, Jake Dennis was out in the group stages of qualifying, so pressure is on for the Andretti driver to deliver.
I think Jake Hughes has impressed me the most with the group qualifying we had earlier on in the session. He was really quick, had a good 2/10 advantage over the rest of that group, and it looked like a competitive group. So here we are with Norman Nato coming through the first sector, only a 25.0 for him, so not the best start to lap. Jake Hughes, as he comes through sector 1, has got a 1/10 advantage. I think Jake, after being the fastest loser and having the accolade that Nick Cassidy has currently got right now, he should be looking to get through into the semi-finals here. He's got strong pace in that McLaren.
Slightly deep at turn 6, though, for my money for Jake Hughes there. That might just cost him half of a tenth of a second or so, but we know how good Hughes is in these one-lap duels. But he has a snap of oversteer there through turn 7. That's going to cost him a bit of time, and Nato subsequently is catching in the second sector. Through into turn 10 for Norman Nato. Hughes a little bit further down the road. Nato out of the final corner and across at the timing line. What is the score on the door for him? It's a 13.9. Not bad, and again a bit more rear instability here for Jake Hughes. He's been able to continue the advantage. He comes out of the final corner. Does he knock out Norman Nato? Yes, he does. Jake Hughes through into the semi-finals. A round of applause from Neon McLaren and from Ian James. So we've got a very unexpected lineup as we head into the semi-finals. Nick de Vries versus Stoffel van Dorn. Jake Hughes versus Antonio Felix da Costa. If you'd had a quid on that before this start of this session, you'd be quids in.
That'll do, mate. That'll do.
Lonesome round of applause there for Jake
Just
Hughes.
thinking the same thing.
Interestingly enough for me, Nick Cassidy did the second fastest lap time of everybody in the duels, and he's out.
Exactly the same situation we had yesterday where Jake Hughes found himself in that position. So yeah, one duel in the quarterfinals really seeming to be the fastest of the bunch. For me, the fact that that's the first quarterfinal suggests that maybe those track temperatures getting a little bit hotter. Maybe as we're getting further into this qualifying, the drivers are starting to struggle more and more with getting those tyres in the right window.
Well, for Jake Hughes, all he's got to do is do the same lap time a couple more times and he'll be in with a shout.
He's going to have to go a little bit faster than that, I think, if he comes up against Antonio Felix da Costa.
That is a very good point. And also, let's not count out Nick de Vries. He's put in some good performances so far here today. He's into the semi-finals. So, well, I mean, at worst, he's going to be, what, 6th on the grid? Something along the lines of that? Not bad.
Not bad indeed. I mean, yeah, Nick de Vries has really taken a lot of confidence from yesterday's result. It's good to see because he's had a difficult start to the season, so we always like an underdog coming through in Formula E, and that's what we seem to have right now.
Yeah, it's the final sector where a lot of drivers have been struggling. Nick Cassidy saying that, you know, he's left a little bit on the table in that final sector as well. So I wonder whether some other drivers have been struggling with that a little bit more than we were anticipating. We look here at Jake Hughes now into the weighbridge. It's interesting, he's been sent to the weighbridge quite a few times actually during the group stages of qualifying. I was talking to him in Mazzano before he got pole position, and he said the problem is I was on a flying lap, I got sent into the weighbridge, it cost me about 2 or 3 minutes there, and then he only got one flying lap in at the end of the session, which wasn't enough to get the tyres in the window.
In the group stage.
Yes,
that's always the risk. You know, the FIA can pull you in at any time in the group sessions and weigh the car just to make sure it's legal. You know, obviously coming in the middle of the session is a key moment where it needs to be done to check that everything's all present and correct, really.
Here is Stoffel van Dorn then. Looking forward to seeing this, a duel between the 2021 and the 2022 champions, of course. It's easy to forget that Nick de Vries is a former champion, given it's been a few years since he took that accolade. But, yeah, very well placed to try and knock out this man here, Stoffel van Dorn.
You can see how hot it is out there. Just look at him. He looks like he's roasting inside that helmet.
Absolutely. Let's have a look and see how we got here then into the semi-finals. So 8 drivers started. We're now down to 4. Nick de Vries versus Stoffel van Dorn in semi-final 1. Semi-final 2 will be Jake Hughes versus Antonio Felix da Costa. We've lost some big hitters from the quarterfinals, including Nick Cassidy, Oliver Rowland, and also Mitch Evans. Big names in the title fight. We've got a lot of work to do here this afternoon. So then, now all the pressure are on the next 2 drivers out on track, and I'm looking forward to seeing what is going to happen over the course of this one. Any thoughts, Billy? What do you reckon?
I'm just liking the fact that looking at the 4 drivers we've got in the semi-finals, 4 different powertrain manufacturers. So again, just showing in qualifying trim so many people in the hunt here.
Yeah, copy. How are tyres? Were they in a good window?
Just a bit of team radio going on there.
Quite good. Okay. I'll try and see if it can do something similar.
The voice of Stoffel Van Dorn. Don't forget about the Formula E Predictor. That's your chance to vote at home at the moment. We've not had a single correct guess, but there's still an opportunity for a bit of redemption.
We're not doubting people at home, Tom. I mean, it's just been an unexpected scenario and session with who's managed to make it through.
Just see here, this is Stoffel Van Dorn cutting the corner at turn 11. See that James Barkley was watching on from that inside the garage as well. Let's have a look here. And just going over to Phil Ingram, who Nick Cassidy is a race engineer. So you wonder whether there might be a little word for the stewards going on there.
Yeah, I know the stewards were looking at that closely as to what is cutting too much of the circuit, what is mowing the lawn, so to say, and what is staying on the race circuit.
Well, there is Nick de Vries. Penny for his thoughts. Very high up in this session.
Alright, so a bit of feedback for you mates. That's purple sector 2, P2 out of everyone so far is sector 3. There's just 300s there. Sector 1, compared to some of the other guys, is just under 2 tenths, 10.5, so similar to what we've been seeing before.
De Vries 13th on the grid yesterday, so whatever happens here will be a career best qualifying for him in season 10, of course, as he returns to Gen 3. Just time for them to have that quick debrief. What's the latest on turn 11?
So just to go back to this turn 11 point so everyone at home really understands it. Turn 11, you must keep your car in contact with the curbs. Otherwise, you're over the track limits, let's say. So I think Stoffel, for me there, was still inside track limits. It was the right-hand side tyres that were in contact with the curb and the left on the grass, but he was in contact with the curb.
Right, OK. So if you bunny hop over it, that's you out of qualifying, is what we're saying there.
Yes, no lawn mowing.
Antonio Felix da Costa, he'll be going head-to-head with Jake Hughes in a few minutes. See the fans here watching on. Fantastic presence here in China for Formula E, back where the championship began in 2014 when we kicked off on the streets of Beijing. And we now sit here in Shanghai, ready for more history to be made this afternoon, as we look forward to the semi-finals kicking off. So, Nick de Vries, Stoffel Van Dorn, Jake Hughes and Antonio Felix da Costa ready to go then. This is going to be hugely exciting. Before we get the semi-finals underway, let's head down to Radzi, who's in the pit lane. Radzi, who have you found?
In terms of P10 to podium yesterday, could it be business as usual again today?
Could be. Just obviously, I think we're one of the cars fighting for pole, and I mean 6 cars have gone through the duels now. I missed out on my duel by 0.006. But I'm second quickest out of the 6 cars that's gone through. So it's the tough part about the duels. Yeah, I could have easily seen Stoff versus me in the final. Unlucky to face him in the quarter.
Thank you for your time, mate. Good luck. Ollie Rowland, we now officially call you the king of the climb. No duels coming into China, and then 2 for 2. Good one-lap pace?
Yeah, good. We struggled a little bit more today with the slipperier conditions. The track's quite a lot slower than yesterday, but yeah, good result. A bit disappointed there not to make it through. I think we chose the wrong strategy with the tyres, but yeah, we'll see later on.
How good is it to be Ollie Rowland right now? As in, this time last year, you weren't in Formula E, and here you are, competing for the podium in the World Championship race.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's been a fantastic year. We find ourselves with a lot of points, P3 in the Drivers' Championship. It's obviously a great year. There's 5 races left, so we need to keep fighting and see if we can stay there.
Race well today.
Thank you.
Good to hear there from Ollie Rowland. Tell you what, he's mentioned your beard game, Bill.
I think he's top of mine. Got a bit of a way to go.
So the semi-finals for round 12. Nick de Vries versus Stoffel Van Dorn. Jake Hughes and Antonio Felix da Costa going head-to-head. Of course, some big hitters we just heard there from Nick Cassidy and from Oliver Rowland. Frustration for Cassidy in particular at the end of the quarterfinals.
It's a harsh format when you come up against someone like Stoffel Van Dorn.
Well then, ready to go for semi-final 1. Nick de Vries versus Stoffel Van Dorn. Mahindra versus DS Penske. And Stoffel Van Dorn is the favourite amongst the predictor votes at home as well. What's your favourite, James?
I would really like to see Nick de Vries deliver here. We saw him set the best Sector 2 of anybody in the quarterfinals. Clearly he's looking after his tyres a little bit in Sector 1 because he was a little bit down in Sector 1. Hopefully he can find a balance and put together all 3 sectors and deliver a shock result really here and knock Stoffel Vandoorne out.
So out of the pit lane come the 2 drivers then. Well, out comes Nick de Vries first of all, and then of course we'll get Stoffel Vandoorne. Vandoorne's won his last 3 semi-final duel appearances, so the momentum is with him. De Vries, of course, seeking to put Mahindra in the duel finals for a 2nd consecutive race weekend when we saw Mortara get onto pole position back in Berlin a fortnight ago.
It's interesting, comparing to where we were at in FP3, Nick de Vries, 18th he was in FP3. Obviously those conditions have changed significantly to where we are, where it's just got hotter and hotter basically throughout the day. And you could hear Oliver Rowland mentioning the fact that, you know, it just feels slippery out there. There's too much rubber going down, too much heat, the tyres are getting cooked, and it just means that the surface temperature's too high. You're not getting any grip out of them at the minute. That's why the lap times are dropping off as we get into really the hottest part of the day.
Just saw inside the Mahindra garage there, Fred Bertrand with the Barnet and the glasses, Jeremy Lançon with the fair hair, and you worked with him, of course, at Maserati last year. He's made the move over to Mahindra this year. Seems to be working well. Yeah,
working very well. Jeremy is an incredible engineer. He's, you know, he's been engineer of the year a couple of times in Formula E. Super talented and knowledgeable man, and clearly he's doing his best to turn around Mahindra's fortunes. You know, Edo Mortara's already had a pole position. Let's see if Nick de Vries can get one as well.
Well, he comes across the timeline then to begin his one and only flying lap in the dual stages. Stoffel Vandoorne a little bit of a way down the road. In towards the first corner we go. Harrying the car through there is Nick de Vries. And here is Stoffel Vandoorne ready to begin his flying lap in this session. 350 kilowatts of power, just to remind you. We've seen drivers fighting on the ragged edge of adhesion. We've slowed the 2 laps down here, so we've got a side-by-side comparison going through to the first corner. Tighter line there for Vandoorne on the right-hand side.
So, yeah, it's a super long corner, isn't it? But it's interesting to see how there are different approaches you can take, James, there.
So when you've got this low grip situation, the shorter distance is always going to be faster. So I quite like what Stoffel's doing in that corner.
And it seems to be working. If we look at the first sector times, over, well, nearly 0.2 of seconds, the advantage Vandoorne's got in the first part of the lap.
Yeah, down in towards the braking zone of turn 6. All looking okay for both drivers. Slightly deep there, actually, for Stoffel Vandoorne. That might cost him a little bit of time. What's the second sector looking like for de Vries? It's a 23.5. Vandoorne's coming away down the road, so he'll be ready to come through it in a few moments' time. It's 23.6 for Vandoorne, so he's a 1/10 of a second shy of him at the moment as we go through turn 8. Again, a tighter line there for de Vries, but a snap of oversteer as we come through into 9. Final sector now awaits. Vandoorne building on the advantages that he's built over Nick de Vries as we come through to the final few corners. And again, more rear instability there for Nick de Vries. So Vandoorne has had a good lap time here. Is he going to be enough to knock out Nick de Vries? It certainly is. 0.2 of a second, and Vandoorne goes through into the finals then. He knocks out the Mahindra driver in the semi-finals.
It's interesting, touching on the lap times, in the quarterfinals, Vandoorne was nearly 0.2 of a second faster than what he's just delivered in the semi-finals. The track is really tricky to drive. It just looked, when we were on the onboards there, that the drivers were really driving underneath the limit to get round.
Good job, dude, good job. Into the final. Good man.
Well, that'll be his 4th appearance in the final in 2024, but he's not started on pole position this year. Over to semi-final 2 then. Jake Hughes versus Antonio Felix da Costa. McLaren versus Tag Heuer Porsche. Pretty close in terms of the predictor, and I reckon this one is going to be a lot tighter in terms of the gap between the two.
All of a sudden, things aren't so straightforward on those predictor votes. People are maybe hedging their bets a little bit.
So down the start finish straight we go here with Jake Hughes, and he has been a master over the course of one lap. A pole position here in Misano, a couple of pole positions last year in his rookie season as well, as we look at the DAC attack, winding himself up out of the final corner of turn 12 and also coming across the timing line. Needs to try and get those 3 points for Tag Heuer Porsche, not only important for him, but also for the team's championship as well as we come in towards the business end of this season.
A good first sector there from Jake Hughes, 24.8. That's kind of there or thereabouts from what we've been seeing from the quicker drivers so far in this stage of qualifying. Let's have a little look. We've got Antonio Felix da Costa's on board as he comes through the apex of 3, keeping that really tight line that you mentioned, James. Now we're in this low grip situation where the temperatures have spiked up, and still actually Jake Hughes has got the advantage going through that first sector by 0.5 tenth.
So through the right-hander we go of turn 8. Couple of bites of the cherry there for Jake Hughes. He tries to get the car rotated. He then flicks it through the left-hander. Coming in towards the final sector, 23.6 for Hughes in sector number 2, 23.635, so just a few hundredths of a second in it. Da Costa is certainly catching in the latter half of this lap. Hughes comes out of the final corner across the timing line, a 13.865. That's a handy lap time there for the Briton in the Neon McLaren, but can Da Costa match it? He's about 8 hundredths of a second shy, nearly up to a tenth of a second or so, but if he has a good final sector, he could be ready to spoil Hughes' party. Out of the final corner we go for the DAC attack then across the timing line. Hughes has done it, a 13.846 for Hughes, a 13.980 for Antonio Felix Da Costa. Sees Jake into the finals for the second time this season.
The predictor vote was right. It was close, but it was right.
What's impressive for me there is in the semi-finals, we had 3 Formula E champions, and Jake Hughes managed to knock one of them out and get himself into the final.
Well, there's a McLaren on the front row of the grid in Monaco, courtesy of Oscar Piastri, and there'll be another McLaren on the front row of the grid here this afternoon in Shanghai.
Potentially one step higher. Might even get the pole.
I don't want to jinx it. I know what the commentator's curse is like. I know what my luck is like as well.
I'll take that gamble.
I'm not chancing anything at all. Great lap time, though, from Jake Hughes. Really extracting the maximum of the Neon McLaren in qualifying. Let's hope he's able to do the business this afternoon in the 28-lap E-Prix.
Well, interesting enough, Hughes was also slightly faster than Van Dorn. And when I say slightly, I mean less than a hundredth.
I was looking forward to Da Costa doing it because I could have used the DAC of the net pun, but it didn't pay off, unfortunately.
You and your puns, Tom.
I know. Christmas crackers, normally, in case you're wondering.
Okay, so yeah, so you're the fastest car in the semi-finals?
Interesting that he just said that you're the fastest car and he didn't give the information that you just gave us, James, about only 8 thousandths of a second in it. Just building that confidence within Jake.
Yeah, hopefully Jake doesn't ask what the gap was, because yeah, if you find out your 8 thousandths difference to Stoffel going to the final, you're definitely not going to have a lot of confidence.
It doesn't really make you think, oh yeah, I'm much faster, does it?
No, I've got this one in the bag, 8 thousandths.
Well, there is Alan Cox, race engineer for Jake Hughes, stand-up comedian in his spare time as well, if you've heard the jokes on the team radio.
Alongside you?
Yeah, exactly. We do
Double
a routine.
act.
Yeah, we do a routine together, actually. Maybe we should. Right, here's how we got into the finals then, from the quarters into the semis. So Van Dorn, De Vries, Da Costa and Hughes through from the quarterfinals. Semi-finals, we see Van Dorn and Hughes going through, so we say goodbye to De Vries and Da Costa. And into the finals, it is Stoffel Van Dorn in the DS Penske and Jake Hughes in the Neon McLaren, who will be going head-to-head in the fight for pole position. Well, now we shift our attention over to the finals. The pressure is on for these two drivers. 1 pole position so far in 2024 for Jake Hughes. 4 front row starts for Stoffel Van Dorn, but never the top step of the grid. Opportunity to change that, though, here in about 5 minutes' time.
Yeah, DS Penske in qualifying trim. Obviously, John-Eric Verne was the man who delivered for them yesterday, getting that pole position. But they do seem to be a team that just in qualifying, they know how to get things right.
Well, one man who didn't make it out of the quarterfinals, a championship contender, Mitch Evans. Victor here yesterday. He is down talking with Radzi.
Mitch Evans, a baptism of fire today. You win yesterday, straight down to business today. Did you have a chance to sort of enjoy that victory yesterday?
Not really. Well, the double hitters, that Saturday win can be, yeah, a little bit boring, I guess, because you always have to like shift your focus straight to the next day. That's fine. We've got a good opportunity today, so we need to make sure we got all the prep done last night, and we can try and execute another good result.
And does strategy change for today, given the fact that you've won with 25 points?
Not really. I think the strategy just naturally, with the race being a little bit shorter, will change for everyone. So everyone will learn what we did yesterday in the race. So yeah, to execute the race today will be even more difficult compared to yesterday. But yeah, that's why we work as hard as we do to try and be 1 step ahead of the game. And let's see if we can get it right today.
Have a good one.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Mitch Evans there, diplomatic as ever. Let's have a look at the fastest laps from the semi-finals here between Stoffel Van Dorn and Jake Hughes. They're just making their way through this second sector of the lap at this point.
Well, Tom, I'm hoping you're not going to ask me to, you know, try and find a separator, considering it was 8 thousandths of a second. My eyes are not that good.
Well, you can see Van Dorn taking a lot of curb there in turn 11 again. I do wonder if he has a little bit of advantage in the confidence level of taking that curb, because I think there could be a tiny bit of difference he can make up in that one going into this final.
You see them there coming down the start finish straight in towards the first corner. That's at the end of their lap, so they'll have just been chatting to the race engineers by that point. But Jake Hughes making it through into the finals along with Stoffel Van Dorn set us up an absolute treat. A very unpredictable front row. Here is Antonio Felix da Costa. I'd say he'll be disappointed with losing out on a spot in the finals, but given his body language, he seems pretty chill and pretty thrilled.
Yeah, third on the grid is a really good position to put yourself in. Not only does it keep you out of that mid-pack sort of part of the grid where you can pick up damage, but also he won't be leading the race, or it would be unlikely he'll be leading the race and using up loads of energy. I'd say that's a pretty good position to find yourself in.
So they're ready to go for the finals for round 12 here in Shanghai. Stoffel Van Dorn versus Jake Hughes going head-to-head in a few moments' time. We're going to catch up with Nick de Vries, though. He made it through to the duels for the first time in 2024, into the semi-finals, no less, as well, just losing out to Stoffel Van Dorn right at the end of that. He was down talking to Radzi. Let's catch up with the former world champion.
Nick de Vries, we know you're a former Formula E world champion, but your first points of the season were here yesterday. Your first duels of the season just happened. You must be pretty pleased.
Yeah, certainly. It's nice to give something back to the team after, I would say, a tough start to the season. Obviously, we knew that it was always going to be difficult, but yeah, it took a bit of time, and I'm very happy that we're on the right track and getting some reward and also confirmation that we're on the right track. Of course, you know, we have our limitations, but we try to maximize what we have, and I'm pleased to be starting, I think, P4 on the grid today.
Thanks for your time. Race well today.
Thank you.
Well, short in stature, but not short in terms of a result in qualifying for Nick de Vries. Fourth on the grid is where he will line up. Very much looking forward to seeing what the Mahindra driver is going to be able to do from there. As we look at some super slow-mos over the curbs at turn 11. It's been a real resurgence to form for Mahindra. If you remember this time last year, they were just completely down and out, suffering software-related problems. No results that, you know, they couldn't buy any good luck at all, seemingly. This time, though, they've really managed to turn their fortunes around. Yeah, Nick de Vries in particular, it's taken him time to get, you know, back up to speeds with the world of Formula E. You know, it's a very different series to what he was previously doing in Formula 1, and it's good to see him, you know, obviously feeling more confident from the sounds of that interview with what he's got underneath him. He still knows there's work to be done, but points are available from where he's starting today. Certainly are. Well, you can see the fans here watching on in Shanghai as the temperature begins to rise, both literally and figuratively. It's getting hotter by the minute here in Shanghai, and it's getting hotter on the circuit as well as we look forward to the duels to get underway for the finals. Once again in that fight for pole position. Just a reminder of how we got here then, looking at this duel ladder. So we had Cassidy and Van Dorn, de Vries and Rowland, Evans and da Costa, Nato and Hughes from the quarterfinals. Into the semis, we had de Vries and Van Dorn going head-to-head, Hughes and da Costa also as well, and we see Van Dorn versus Hughes then here in the finals. Drivers now heading out onto the fast lane at the exit of the pits. It'll be Van Dorn out first of all, an indeterminate period of time, and then Jake Hughes will be out onto the circuit as we see which of these two drivers will be able to extract the maximum from the DS Penske and the Neon McLaren. Very close in terms of the 48, 47, 53 predictor votes. Hughes slightly with the advantage. Who's your money on, Tom? You're going to give commentators curse? No, I'm not a betting man here. I'm staying well away from that. James, who do you reckon?
I reckon the fastest one's going to be on pole.
I like that.
Very political answer there.
Very different. There's a team principle if ever you've heard one. Out of the pit lane we go. So Stoffel Van Dorn exits then in the DS Penske. Wants to be careful to get heat into the tyres, but not too much though. Keep them in that right operating window. He's still pushing on and trying to really generate front tyre temperature there going through these sweepers.
Yeah, through that long-term one, he's over-slipping the front tyres there to try and generate a bit of surface temperature in the fronts, because obviously the rears, in a heat like this, they'll be up to temperature without really much effort. So that's where the balancing act comes into play. You've got to make sure that the fronts are in line with the rear, so you get a nice balanced car to start the lap with.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Jake has a completely different approach here. He just drives out fairly calmly, not slipping the front tyres at all. Stoffel clearly wants his front tyres to be a little bit hotter, and maybe he feels a bit more confident. His car setup is more in line with having those front tyres really nice and hot. So for everyone at home, when you slide those front tyres, you really generate a lot of temperature. That temperature that you build early on that outlap in turn 1 will soak into the bulk of the tyre and be able to give you a bit more grip when you start your flying lap.
So here is Stoffel Vandoorne then coming through into the final sector, turns 10, 11 and 12, and he will begin the 3-kilometre climb then as he tries to aim for pole position. Out of the final corner we go for Vandoorne in the DS Penske. What can he do? Will it go the way of the Belgian driver, or will it be Jake Hughes who ends up on pole position? We'll find out in just over a minute's time. Down towards T1 we go. Nice and smooth through there. Looks like the rotation of the car's all good for Vandoorne through the first couple of corners. We now look at Jake Hughes then out of the final turn. Nice clean exit. He heads down towards T1.
Yeah, Vandoorne there, it looked like when we could see the off-board shots of his car as we now ride on-board. He looked like he was taking a tighter line. Let's look what it is like on the onboard. Yeah, tighter line, and Jake Hughes actually probably even tighter than Stoffel Vandoorne. So both of them taking the same approach. Vandoorne having a little wobble there as we go back towards the apex of 2 and now down a big drop. The cameras don't really do it justice on the way into turn 3. Again, both of them taking a tighter line. All looking fairly neat and tidy so far. Stoffel Vandoorne has got the edge though.
Vandoorne with the early advantage, as you say, about a tenth of a second or so, but Hughes is catching coming in towards this second sector. Deep on the apex there for turn 6 at Stoffel Vandoorne. So let's see how it looks coming in towards turn 7 and turn 8. This is where we've seen drivers losing time with snaps of oversteer. Hughes is closing still, and he's now ahead of Stoffel Vandoorne in this second sector. This is going to be an almightily close fight for pole position as we come through turn 8 into the left-handed kink of turn 9. Vandoorne under pressure. Hughes building out the advantage, aiming for his second pole position of 2024. Just 2 more corners now remaining as we come through into turn 12. Out of the corner we go, across the timing line. Hughes versus Vandoorne. It's so close, 1,000th of a second in it, and Jake Hughes does it and takes pole position by the tightest margin we've ever seen in Formula E. Jake Hughes is on top for the second time in 2024.
Tom, 1,000th of a second is unbelievable. I don't think I've seen that sort of gap in any other championship when it comes down to the fight for pole. It is incredible how close these Formula E cars, no matter what sector, you know, if there's a mistake in sector 1, a mistake in sector 3, by the end of the lap, it all seems to be as close as possible.
Absolutely amazing from Jake Hughes. We thought it was going to be tight, James. 1,000th of a second, though.
That will do.
What do we get it? That felt awful.
Well, it's good to know an awful performance to put you on pole.
Should have no excuses in the race if he's got pole position with an awful lap.
No, we could see, you know, he was clearly struggling towards the end of the lap there with the balance of his car. He did an amazing middle sector, Jake Hughes. That's where he rescued the lap. It was so perfect in the mid sector. We saw, I think, the fastest sector 2 that we've seen in all of the duel phase. So cracking performance from him. Very, very impressive for him to beat, you know, 3 champions.
Your dad looks pretty happy.
I love to hear Jake Hughes on the radio. That is his 4th pole position of his Formula E career, his 2nd of the season. Fantastic job from him, and let's hope it translates into a strong race result this afternoon.
You know, I really hope that he and the team can get it together in the race today, because we've seen him so strong in qualifying before, last season, this season. He's really struggled to put together a strong performance in the race. So I really hope that off the back of this, they can go and bring it home in the top 5 or the podium.
Well, there we are. Delight for McLaren, delight for Ian James as he makes his way down into Parc Fermé, and now we see Jake Hughes exiting out of the car as well.
Can I just say, what a great grid we have for this afternoon's race. It is going to be amazing. We have all the title protagonists at the front, at the back, in the middle. I mean, it's just going to be unbelievable again in Formula E.
Stoffel Vandoorne, let's hear what he says.
1/1000th. He's beaten us by 1/1000th.
You're joking.
Small wonder we had to delay that radio message there. I'm glad we've got the beat machine on standby. They couldn't do that again if they tried, could they?
He definitely knows where that 1,000th is. I mean, he could probably list 5 or 6 places where he could have improved his lap time, Billy, by 1,000th.
1,000th, I mean, you can't even notice that sort of margin. That is it's absolutely nothing, honestly. It's incredible that the cars are separated by that much. I mean, after the semi-final, we thought, you know, the margin that Jake Hughes had over Stoffel Vandoorne when it was 0.008 of a second. We thought that was tight, and his engineer, Jake's engineer, decided not to tell him that gap, but he was quite happy to tell him the gap when he knew that he was ahead of Stoffel Vandoorne and on pole by 1,000.
That's a heck of a syrup that child's got on there. Proper wig, I like that. Well, anyway, looking forward to the race this afternoon then. Jake Hughes, pole position by 1/1000th of a second. They loved that here in Shanghai. We loved it in the commentary box as well. And there you go, confirmation of how it looks in the finals.
Absolutely unbelievable, that is. What a performance from the two of them.
Couldn't have asked for a better qualifying session than that. We've had a massive upset, lots of title contenders out of position. A very energy compact race we're expecting once again as well. There is a big opportunity for an upset.
Yeah, throwing it forward to the race, just looking at what we just saw there in qualifying. The quarterfinals were the fastest session out of all the duels. The semi-finals got slower, the final got slower than that, and I think that is because of the temperatures. So again, another factor that the teams and the drivers are going to have to look at how they manage that for the race later today.
Well, it is the closest ever margin we've seen for pole position. It actually ties the record that Lucas Di Grassi had in Berlin in 2017. Also, we had a pole position separated by 2,000 of a second back in Sao Paulo earlier this year. So these shorter sort of laps, you know, these high-speed circuits that we have in Formula E, they tend to provide some close action.
No, it's very impressive.
Let's have a listen down here so we can catch a few words. And of course we cut away from it just as I throw down there.
He said thank you. So he's obviously happy with what they've given him.
You know how to keep us on tenterhooks. Yeah, I know. That was so well deserved.
Cheers,
well driven. Well driven.
Thank you very much. 3 extra points in the championship now for Jake Hughes as well. Let's not forget 3 extra points for Neil McLaren. Could be important come the end of the season. There's Gary Paffett down there as well, former DTM driver. He's had a long association with McLaren over the years, now helping out with the Neil McLaren team. A crucial role that he has within that outfit.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting that, you know, the dynamic that, you know, Jake Hughes was seen as being slightly outperformed by Taylor Barnard last time out. All of a sudden, he's found some pace and he's got another pole position to add to the list. A few more points on the board, so he's really bounced back where, you know, maybe an extra bit of pressure was added by how good Taylor Barnard did last time out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's going to have to deliver in the race, though. It's one thing doing it in qualifying, totally different thing doing it in a Formula E energy-dependent race.
Points are points, though. 3 points is quite a lot for pole position, like more than what we see in most other championships.
Well, let's get an interview then with our pole sitter, Jake Hughes, on pole for the 2nd time this season.
Jake Hughes, this time yesterday, you led the group after qualifying, fell at the first hurdle in duels. 24 hours later, you lead the group after qualifying, and you've just finished on pole by 1/1000th. That was Boston, mate.
Boston. I'll see what you did there. I'm buzzing, as you can probably tell. The team gave me a mega quick car all weekend, to be honest. It was a shame yesterday. I think I had a chance to get pole yesterday, but didn't manage to get it. So yeah, 24 hours later, feels pretty nice.
Another thing that changed yesterday, we didn't hear your dad. We definitely heard your dad that time. Did that help?
Oh, did you? Did you? No one could miss him, could they? Yeah, maybe he should come more often. It seems to suit me.
Mate, massive congratulations. Jake Hughes, 3 points, pole sitter, and to present the pole position Julius Baer Trophy, Chen Dung-mei and Teng Yun from the Jiading District Sports Bureau, the Jiading District of Ecological Environment Bureau.
Jake Hughes then, pole position number 2 in 2024. Can he convert it into his first podium finish of the season with a 28-lap E-Prix on the way this afternoon?
On my own.
Absolutely phenomenal. Really, really enjoyed that qualifying session. Big upset for some drivers.
Did we get it? 1,000th. You got it, mate.
1,000th of a bit of that, son.
Jake, you are going to owe me some serious medication after that, mate. I tell you. Well done.
Oh, I can get someone posy. I'll be the middle one.
Let's catch up then with Stoffel Vandoorne.
Stoffel Vandoorne, the bitter part of the pill is when you win by 1/1000th of a second, it's one thing. When you lose by it, it must be tough.
It's probably the worst feeling to lose a pole position by 1,000. We've been quick all day, quick in the groups again, quick in the duels. Yeah, just missing 1,000. So it came down to nothing. It's a P2 again, another front row. I think we've been there quite a few times this year. But yeah, let's see in the race. I think we're in good shape. So hopefully we can bring home a good result.
Talking about the race, P9 yesterday, does that set you up for a better performance today?
It should do. I mean, the race is going to be a bit different with the energy targets. At least we're in the right peloton, let's say. So, yeah, I think everything is to play for, to be honest.
Well, commiserations, but a brilliant lap.
Thank you.
Well, Stoffel Vandoorne looking like he's dropped a pound and picked up a penny after that qualifying session. 1,000th of a second in it at the end of the finals. Team radio for him.
Oh, dude. Hell. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Good effort, mate. Good effort.
Oh my God.
Another final.
Well, a disappointment for DS Penske. Delight, though, for Jake Hughes, as we saw. Still, opportunity knocks here this afternoon as well. 28 laps of action ready to come your way. And, of course, qualifying as well is always an exciting affair, but it's when the race kicks off that we're expecting drama to unfold. Lots of drivers out of position. Jake Dennis missing out on a spot in the duels. Of course, as well as Nick Cassidy out in the quarterfinals. Mitch Evans likewise as well, so Jaguar with a bit of work to do from that third row of the grid. Antonio Felix da Costa made it through into the semi-finals, but ultimately was outpaced by Hughes. He will line up third on the grid for the race here this afternoon. Keen to see what the Portuguese driver can do. He's been very impressive in these high energy packed races that we've been having recently in Formula E. So let's see what happens, of course, with teammate Pascal Wehrlein starting way down the order as well. He'll need to have a good run in the opening few laps.
Well, an unbelievably close qualifying session in day 2 here in Shanghai. But it was Jake Hughes who took the spoils by 1,000th of a second, his second pole position of the series, of this season. A fantastic result for McLaren. James, I mean, it's immeasurable, really, 1,000th of a second. I think it's literally equates to 3 centimetres ahead. An unbelievable final there between Stoffel Vandoorne and Jake Hughes.
No, very close, and every driver knows where they can find that tiny margin of time. I'm sure Stoffel is going to lose a bit of time in the next 20 minutes thinking where he could have made the difference and got those 3 points for pole position.
Yeah, quite unbelievable, because obviously Nick Cassidy, Mitch Evans, Oliver Rowland were all out in the quarterfinal stages.
What's amazing for me is in the whole duel phase from quarters, semis, final, Nick set the second fastest lap time out of everyone. So he's the one that's incredibly unlucky, but he has got all the pace to get it done today.
And then let's talk about Nick de Vries. What a spectacular moment for him and Mahindra. Yes, he might have not got through to the finals, but getting through to the semi-finals, what a turnaround for him.
Stunning performance from him and the team. You know, they've had a great qualifying season, let's say. They're struggling to put it together in the race, but qualifying, they had a pole with Edo Mortara, and now to get Nick into the duels, and his first appearance in the duels to get to the semis, very, very strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, they haven't struggled so much in the race. I mean, Nick did a great job yesterday. I think he qualified P14, finished in 7th. Yeah, we can see him at the moment in the car.
No, he was really great in that second sector. He was always losing a little bit in sector 1. Sector 2, he was blisteringly fast in every session, actually. So very impressive. Clearly, they found something in their car.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they can carry that on to the next couple of races.
Well, of course, Edo Mortara is also also had a pole position for the team this season. Anyway, let's remind ourselves of how the starting grid is going to look for a second time here this weekend in Shanghai. It is, of course, Jake Hughes for McLaren with his second pole position of the season in the Papaya. Stoffel Vandoorne alongside him, still looking for his first pole of the season, but he has still a lot to give in the course of this race. In the second row of the grid, we've got Antonio Felix da Costa and Nick de Vries. Nick will hopefully be able to move forward rather than move back. P5, we've got Nick Cassidy, our driver, at the top of the team's championship at the moment, and his teammate, Mitch Evans, in P6. Are they going to work together or against each other?
They're going to have to after yesterday. You know, they worked well yesterday. They've worked well in previous events, so hopefully today they will as well.
Norman Nato P7 and Oliver Rowland there in P8. But again, we've seen Oliver move from the mid-pack and finish on the podium countless times. Jean-Eric Verne starting from ninth. Max Günther needs a little bit of luck on his side. He got a penalty yesterday for some rather decisive moves in P10. Sam Bird struggling a little bit with his wrist in P11. And Sasha Fenestras there in P12. Sasha, again, is looking for a better result for himself and the Nissan team, isn't he?
Sasha definitely needs a result today. You know, he's been struggling against his teammate, and he really does need to get it done.
Pascal Wehrlein will be starting from P13, and alongside him, a rival, of course, Jake Dennis in 14. That's going to be interesting at the start.
Yes, elbows out comes to mind, so hopefully they can keep some maturity and stay out of each other's side pods.
Sergio Setikamera will line up alongside Jehan Darubala in the Maserati car in P16. Then in 17th and 18th, we've got Nico Müller, who's put in a sterling performance for the Ab Cupra so far this season. And Dan Ticktum, not perhaps the result we were hoping for down in P18, because he's done, again, a sterling job over the course of this season.
Blistering pace in practice, and yeah, just not getting it quite put together down there.
Lucas de Grassi in P19 with Robin Freins for Envision in P20. Also Sebastian Remy, his teammate there, down in 22nd. Envision, again, really struggling for qualifying pace.
They are really struggling. It's difficult to see the reigning championship team really struggling with qualifying performance, and I don't know what we can put it down to.
Well, we will hopefully look towards Envision Racing in the course of the race, and hopefully they can claw up and move up a few positions. Billy, let's get your thoughts. Again, it was just such an exciting qualifying session. We have never seen it this close. 1,000th of a second between them. But ultimately, pole position isn't everything at this track here in Shanghai. How is that momentum going to carry through into the race for Jake Hughes?
Yeah, I mean, pole position isn't everything. Obviously, it's 3 championship points, so that's a nice boost for the team, knowing that they've at least got some points out of today already. But, you know, considering Jake Hughes has already had a pole position this season, he didn't manage to execute it in the best way. He'll be hoping that he can pick up, you know, some solid points in the race. You can just see coming through the last couple of corners here, Jake Hughes, you know, just taking a little bit too much curb in the second to last corner. It nearly got away from him. That last sector wasn't quite as strong as Stoffel Vandoorne's, but when it counted, he did manage just to have enough in the tank. 1,000th of a second is next to nothing, though.
I thought it was quite interesting when he did his semi-finals, you know, he asked on the team radio, you know, how did I do? And they just said, you're the quickest. They didn't let on the fact that he was only 8,000th of a second quicker. Was that a tactical decision, or was it just not letting him know?
I mean, 8,000ths quicker in the semis and 1,000ths quicker in the final, but it counted.
Yeah, it really did. Is it better to know, though, or not?
Well, always better to know you're the fastest.
Yeah, true. Well, there we go. It is Jake Hughes for McLaren on the pole position here in Shanghai. Do join us in a few hours' time as racing gets underway. We can't predict the podium, but we can predict plenty of action here in Shanghai.